Restart. Spider-Man. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 76 Good Neighbor. Rising Dragon Fist. Gwen stared blankly at the red and blue figure in front of her, and the feeling of suffocation finally eased. The red and blue metal battle suit must be him. No, who just shouted Spider-Man's name? She just reacted. In front of her, Charlotte easily blocked the iron fist with one hand and poked her head out to look at the rhino. Hey, big rhino, is it the rainy season or the dry season in the African savannah now? Arsehole, how can I know? After Alexei came to his senses, he immediately controlled the rhino mecha to burst out more than 10 tons of fist force again. Buzz, the engine roared, and the mechanical sound quickly sounded, but Charlotte still casually resisted this force with one hand. Well, it seems that you didn't like watching Animal World when you were a child. As he said that, Charlotte's body staggered away from the iron fist and slid to the back of the mecha. What? Without waiting for the mecha to start again, Charlotte jumped onto the tall mecha. The flexible bug climbed the metal iron sheet, and Alexei immediately lost his target. Arsehole, get down here. A cliché controlled the iron hand to slap his body continuously, trying to catch the hateful bug, but the bulky mecha couldn't touch Charlotte's hair at all, because he was wearing a hood. Crack, crack, crack. The next moment, the red and blue figure flipped and landed, and the crystal spider silk in his hand suddenly stretched straight. Crack, crack, crack. In an instant, the metal shell of the mecha was covered with sparks, and the rhino mecha trapped in the spider silk trap trembled and could no longer move freely. Damn you, what did you do to me? An angry curse came from the mecha. The more he struggled, the deeper the mecha fell into the spider silk trap. As large pieces of iron were cut by spider silk, a cliché suddenly understood something. He had seen the video circulating on the internet, and the big red octopus was solved by this trick. It was spider silk. The black Spider-Man was indeed him. Finding that the rhino was no longer struggling, Charlotte turned around and said with a smile, "Don't try to play the armor without a reactor. It's too unchallenging." Although the rhino mecha was huge, it was too slow, and its punching force was only a dozen tons. It was not equipped with advanced weapons and equipment. At most, it could only bully those mutants. On this side, seeing that the rhino mecha was controlled, Gwen and Mary Jane completely relaxed. Spider-Man, thank you. It's too early to thank him now. The voice in the rhino mecha interrupted the two people's thanks. The cockpit door on the chest of the mecha slightly opened a fist-sized gap, and then was blocked by spider silk. Spider-Man, excuse me, I want to come out, the bald man said in a muffled voice. Charlotte was stunned, very polite. The next second, he suddenly dragged the spider silk in his hand, and the hatch closed completely. It's better for you to stay inside. As he said, Charlotte lightly tapped the wrist device. Captain, I have a situation here. You locate my position and bring people to deal with it. Understood. Carter on the other end of the communication took immediate action. After closing the communication, Charlotte violently tore open a piece of iron sheet in the cockpit, allowing a cliché inside to show his head. Tell me, why did you capture those mutants? He asked. A cliché stuck his head out of the hole in the hatch and looked around. He hummed, of course, hand them over to Kingpin. Then what? Charlotte continued to ask. A cliché retracted his head, as if groping for something in the cockpit. I'm just a thug, I don't know much. Will you tell me? I heard that we need to get important things from their bodies. This is all I know. You are quite honest. Charlotte thought this guy would not say anything. Found it. Suddenly, a cliché in the cockpit laughed. Ha ha ha, Spider-Man, your doomsday has come. Ha. Under the warning of the spider sense, Charlotte jumped down from the treetop without hesitation, and the spider silk trap cut the rhino mecha in an instant. Bang, crack. Crack, sparks exploded, the wreckage of the mecha splashed wantonly, and Eccles's exposed body was also tightly bound by the crystal spider silk. But it seemed too late. Eccles, who was bound by the spider silk, had half of the mutant spider's body hanging from the corner of his mouth. With a slurp, the whole mutant spider burst out protein plasma during his chewing, and was quickly swallowed whole. What? He actually ate the mutant spider. Gwen and Mary Jane looked at this scene in disbelief. And Charlotte's spider sense was a crazy warning. Immediately, he didn't care what would happen next. His arm muscles suddenly swelled a circle, and the spider silk trap stretched straight and strangled Eccles's body wantonly. Puff. Ah. The moment the spider silk sank into Eccles's flesh and blood, his face became hideous, and his body was rapidly expanding and mutating, while he roared non-stop, and his bones made strange noises one after another, and the crystal spider silk quickly melted in the black blood oozing out of this body. Gagaga, the changes continued. A disgusting spider mouth opened at the corner of his mouth. His hands and feet were extremely twisted, and dense black short hair appeared on his skin. One by one, hideous spider legs covered with bone spurs broke out from his back. A terrifying spider monster was born. Fear and evil were released. Looking at the spider monster in front of them, Gwen and Mary Jane screamed and retreated, and Charlotte's face became solemn. After swallowing the mutant spider, this guy's blood could melt the spider silk trap. It seemed that this monster was born to restrain Spider-Man's ability. SHHH. Eccles, who had turned into a monster, screamed at Charlotte, "Spider-Man, let me eat you." Puff puff puff. A sentence came out of his mouth, and then white spider silk shot out from the other party's mouth, instantly covering Charlotte and several trees. In response, Charlotte quickly switched to artificial spider silk mode. Puff. In the explosive silk mode, the spider silks of both sides collided in mid-air. After just a moment's delay, Charlotte had already swung down to the treetops not far away. Looking back, the spider silk spit out by Eccles easily swept away the artificial spider silk to cover several trees. His white smoke rose, and the trees quickly melted under the corrosion of the spider silk. Wow, sulfuric acid spider silk. In the spider silk slingshot, Charlotte gave a thumbs up to the other party. Boom. The red and blue phantom passed by Eccles at a high speed. At the moment when the two crossed, Charlotte reached out and grabbed a spider leg behind the other party. Fly no. In the woods under the night, the spider monster was violently thrown into the air dozens of meters and then fell to the ground in free fall. Damn bug. Eccles, who was falling at a high speed, locked onto Charlotte on the ground, and the ends of the 6 spider legs behind him glowed with a cold light. "You are also a bug now." After Charlotte finished speaking, he burst out from the spider silk slingshot again, and rushed straight to the spider monster above his head. Die. Eccles controlled the spider spear, and stabbed it downward. "Sorry, I won't die this time." Charlotte's eyes turned red, and black liquid quickly covered his body, and the 4 spider spears spread. Ding ding ding. In an instant, the sharp spider spears of the 2 people collided in mid-air, sparks flew, and the broken spider spears fell with black blood. Eccles's body was pushed into the air again with a muffled sound. Good neighbor rising dragon fist. I originally wanted to update the 2 chapters into time periods, but I think it's better to release them together. I'm afraid that you will be unhappy and support the book. Humble. Backquote. Chapter 77. Villains also need to read books and newspapers. In midair, Charlotte hit the opponent's abdomen and quickly climbed onto his back. Bang. With a huge force, Charlotte flew into the sky, while Eccles under his feet smashed into the ground at a faster speed. Good neighbor. Poisonous dragon drill. High in the sky, Charlotte controlled the glider under his armpits, causing his body to spin rapidly during the fall. The wind was howling, and the spider spears behind him also gathered to form a spider spear drill at this moment. Buzz puff. The black whirlwind fell from the sky and hit the monster's body, and the shrill screams swept through the forest. Ah. Tear as the black spider spear quickly tore the monster's body. The black blood scattered around quickly corroded the forest. Gwen and Mary Jane, who were hiding far away, had already dropped their jaws at this scene. They looked at the black Spider-Man tearing the monster with horror in their eyes, and it took them a while to come back to their senses. He became even more ferocious after turning black. It was him. He killed Captain Steve after the plane crashed. Captain Steve. Mary Jane was shocked. That big octopus is the captain? Gwen reacted and shook her head quickly. No, you heard it wrong. After the scene was controlled by the mysterious department that day, the news that the octopus monster was Steve was blocked. Her father was also there at the time, so she knew the secret. But for the sake of her father's future, she couldn't reveal it casually. Whether the red and blue Spider-Man and the black Spider-Man are the same person was originally a matter of great discussion. but because of the subsequent Spider-Man flooding incidents, coupled with the deliberate guidance of the mysterious department, the heat of this matter was quickly suppressed. Now after witnessing this scene with her own eyes, she can finally be sure. Hoo-la-la, suddenly, a rustling sound came from the surrounding woods, and Gwen and Mary Jane's faces became terrified. And Charlotte also frowned slightly. This guy's not very strong, but he can cause crazy warnings from spider sense. It's really not that simple. Under his observation, the scattered fragments of the spider monster squirmed and turned into thumb-sized black mutant spiders and quickly gathered from the forest into a dark wave of spiders rushing towards him. So many little spiders. Charlotte's scalp was a little numb and she turned around and shot spider silk into the dark forest. Gaga, you can't escape. The spider wave briefly condensed into a human figure and then turned into a tide again to chase in the direction Charlotte left. Watching the spider wave leave, Gwen and Mary Jane's stiff bodies gradually relaxed. It's so scary. What kind of monster is that? Mary Jane patted her chest and said with lingering fear. Gwen exhaled slowly, frowning deeply. Our strength is too weak. We can't help Spider-Man at all. You can't help him, but you can help me. Suddenly, a cold voice suddenly appeared behind the two of them. What? At night, the city train passed the rails at high speed. The passengers in the carriage were drowsy, but as a familiar figure appeared on the TV screen hanging on the ceiling, everyone was awakened by excited screams. Hey, all the Insomniac viewers, yes, it's me again. I'm Jonah Jameson, the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bugle. I'll be with you tonight to get through the difficult night. The moment Jonah appeared on the screen, all the passengers started cursing. Shit, it's this guy again. This damn guy, I want to smash the TV. He's been very active recently. I heard he's an expert in Spider-Man. Oh no, I don't want to watch this bitch's performance. I have to work the night shift later. We are not friends with insomnia. Amid the curses, Jonah in the picture held a cigar in his mouth and talked freely. Everyone must be curious about why there are so many Spider-Men appearing recently, but that's not what I want to discuss today. He showed 3 photos of Spider-Man to the camera. Today we are going to talk about the Black Spider-Man. He pointed to one of the photos and said, "This is the original Spider-Man. His suit was made from cheap pajamas. He is also the first Spider-Man we know." In the second photo, his suit is upgraded to metal. And the third one is the Black Spider-Man. At this point, Jonah paused, and the host on the side finally got a chance to interrupt. He quickly asked, "Mr. Jameson, are these 3 Spider-Men the same person?" Jonah laughed. Ha ha ha, of course they are the same person. How can you be sure? After all, there are so many Spider-Men now. The host asked. Jonah affirmed, "Of course I can be sure, because I was there when the Black Spider-Man first appeared. Although his fighting style has become more wild, it can't be hidden from my eyes. From the beginning when he appeared, I was observing him. The Spider-Man who appeared later did not have such a strong power as him." After hearing Jonah's words, the host still looked unconvinced, and he pointed to the 3 photos. But from the photos, their bodies seem different. I don't think they are the same person. Ha ha ha, I guessed you would ask that. Jonah explained. Yes, the Spider-Man we usually see is like a poor skinny bug. We can't imagine how such a thin body can burst out with such powerful strength. But after entering the combat state, I observed that his muscles would expand to a certain extent, and his body would become taller and stronger. At that time, his strength would become stronger. This is a very special ability. After Jonah finished speaking, the host clapped his hands and said, "Oh, this is incredible. He can actually control his body shape." The passengers in the car also showed a look of sudden enlightenment. So that's it. Suddenly, a muffled sound came from the darkness outside the car. Boom in the woods near the track. Charlotte's arm muscles swelled up, and his black fists hit the ground directly. The waves of spiders that surged around exploded and turned into black blood mist under this huge force. However, these blood mists would condense into mutant spiders again, entangled with Charlotte, as if they were immortal, making him more irritated. Charlotte now finally understood what it was like to encounter an unkillable enemy. Ha ha ha, damn bug, you can't kill me. The mutant spider condensed into a human form, and Eccles laughed arrogantly, and then turned into an endless wave of spiders to kill Charlotte. At the same time, the passengers in the train did not find anything unusual. They were gradually attracted by Jonah's show. Okay, let's talk about Spider-Man's wall climbing ability. In the picture, Jonah raised his palm. According to my guess, Spider-Man's fingers have also mutated. I have interviewed those fakes. Their fingers are usually the same as ordinary people. When needed, their fingers can generate tiny barbs, which helps them climb walls. But I think it's not just that. Many people have seen Spider-Man climb up smooth glass, and those barbs obviously can't help him do this. So I guess that Spider-Man's body may be able to generate special biological static electricity using the static electricity reaction between his body and the surface of the object, so that he can climb the smooth surface at will without the battlesuit. Jonah continued to talk about his point of view. Outside the window, a black figure climbed past, and a large number of mutant spiders quickly swarmed towards the train. Hahaha, poor bug, thank you for sending a cart of dinner. A Klesmer's figure was looming in the swarm of bugs. Charlotte turned around. Actually, I want to say that, even if you are a villain, you should also read more. What? Chapter 78 Blow. My pride is indulged. But as the train was running at high speed, a large number of mutant spiders suddenly encountered a strong airflow when approaching the train. In an instant, a large number of mutant spiders were swept away by the violent airflow and turned into black vortices, spinning rapidly with the air vortex. Oh, shit, no. Aklash kept exclaiming. Some mutant spiders madly hit the iron sheet with the airflow and immediately made a sound like pouring beans. A large number of mutant spiders turned into blood mist in the process and were then swept away by the airflow. The train passed by at high speed, and the mutant spiders quickly condensed into Aklash's body on the track. Looking at the black figure on the roof, he howled to the sky and was extremely angry. Why? Why am I so stupid? Before he could continue to chase, a roar came from the sky above his head. Carter is finally here. On the roof, seeing the helicopter flying over at a high speed, Charlotte slowly exhaled. These endless guys are really troublesome. Let S.H.I.E.L.D. have a headache next. Kingpin has captured so many mutants, there must be a lot of movement behind. Maybe Hydra was involved. He didn't want to waste time with this guy. Just as he was about to leave, a helicopter in the night sky flew over Ecclesia and headed straight for Charlotte. Charlotte had a bad feeling when he realized something was wrong. Sure enough, he saw flames bursting out of the helicopter cabin, and a rocket was heading straight for Charlotte. Instantly, Charlotte raised his hand and fired spider silk to lock the incoming rocket, and then jumped off the train. Go back. With Charlotte's roar, the standard discus throwing action was completed in one go. The spider silk dragged the rocket around him and flew towards the helicopter in the air. Boom. The rocket hit the helicopter directly, and flames burst out in the night sky. You play as a friendly neighbor to save everyone on the train, and a number of restarts +3. The helicopter with thick smoke crashed to the ground and burst into smoke again. The high-speed rotating propeller cut the rails, and gravel and debris flew indiscriminately. In the flames, a figure slowly stood up. The blood-colored mist spread rapidly, and the familiar smell of blood spread. What is that? In Charlotte's surprised eyes, the metal arm covered in blood broke into pieces. The blood-red granulation grew wantonly, the hideous barbs protruded from it, and the blood-colored claws like a beast came into view. Charlotte Parker, I want to avenge Steve. Bucky walked out of the sea of fire with an indifferent face, and the blood-colored arm turned into a blood-colored sword. Die. Bucky ran wildly, and the blood-colored sword smashed down brazenly. Under the warning of the spider sense, Charlotte did not hesitate to fly back, and the next second, the place where he was before turned into a huge pit. Bang! The gravel flew all over the sky, and Bucky was wrapped in the blood-colored mist at a fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he swept in front of Charlotte. Whoosh, the wind was fierce, and the blood-colored sword chopped again, but Charlotte's fist reached Bucky's eyes first. Boom. With a loud noise, the air exploded, and dozens of tons of fist force blasted out. Bucky's body was instantly rolled back hundreds of meters away, leaving a trace of being plowed by a bulldozer along the way. Is the power of Hydra implanted? Charlotte slowly retracted his fist. His blood-red eyes flashed for a moment, and his swollen muscles returned to their original state. Since you are here, I will just finish you off in one go. After saying that, the black body suddenly rose up, and the Spider-Man physique that merged with the Titan's body completely burst out with great power and instantly turned into a black cannonball and rushed towards Bucky. After the brief confrontation just now, he found that Bucky's attributes in all aspects were far inferior to Steve, which showed that the power of Hydra had limited effect on him and was not very difficult to deal with. Boom. The airflow was turbulent, and Bucky felt the pressure from Charlotte. He gritted his teeth and rushed towards the opponent, and the bloody knife squirmed and turned into a ferocious claw. Wow. Killing the original form. The spider spear behind Charlotte was ready to move. Boom bang bang bang, the claws tore through the air. The ground trembled slightly under the huge force. The black spider spear flashed cold light, blood splashed, and the bloody arm was pierced by the spider spear and fixed to the ground. Ah! Bucky cried out in pain, and before he could gather strength to counterattack, Charlotte had already rushed behind Bucky. He planned to use the same method to deal with Bucky. As long as he pulled out the opponent's spine, the battle would be completely over. Hoola la, the next moment, a swarm of black insects swarmed in, and Charlotte felt troubled. He didn't want these insects to climb onto his body, so he swung Bucky's body to sweep away the insects. Boom bang, with a loud noise, the blood-colored mist covering Bucky's body exploded, and the mutant spider that was smashed could no longer condense into shape after being stained with blood mist, which made a class tremble. This thing can restrain his ability. When Charlotte found this situation, he couldn't help but grin. Very good, double kill is reserved. Puff. At this moment, Bucky suddenly tore off his arm and finally broke free from Charlotte's clutches. He rolled to the side, and the broken arm quickly squirmed, and a new arm soon grew. Let's go together and kill him, he said to Aklesh. Aklesh snorted, I'm not your thug. I'll pay. Transaction successful. In an instant, a large number of mutant spiders piled up together, and a 3-meter high strong body condensed into shape. Recovering into a human-shaped spider monster, Aklesh did not approach Charlotte rashly, but shot spider silk from a distance. Puff puff puff, the corrosive spider silk enveloped Charlotte, and just as Charlotte was about to make another move, Bucky rushed towards him regardless. Hiss, the blood-colored mist spread again, and a small part of the white spider silk naturally decomposed the moment it came into contact with the mist, and did not affect Bucky at all. But Charlotte was different. He could feel that these white spider silks posed a great threat to him. Die! Bucky yelled, his bloody claws growing flesh granules crazily, and his 5 fingers turned into 5 tentacles to block all of Charlotte's escape routes. In response, Charlotte just calmly stretched out his palms, and the black liquid squirmed until his palms turned into the size of a palm leaf fan. Friends who have been Hulks know how to use this trick. Blow, my pride and indulgence. The next moment, he slapped his palms, and 70 tons of power exploded in an instant, and the gravel and flying sand were swept away crazily under the airwave. Boom, the violent airflow centered on Charlotte spread rapidly, and the white spider silk that attacked was rolled back under the airflow, and the blood-colored mist at the scene also spread with a whistling sound. Hiss, under the blood mist, Klee was unable to dodge, causing his body to be corroded by the blood mist and produce a large amount of white smoke. The severe pain made him fall to the ground and roll around uncontrollably, extremely embarrassed. It hurts so much. On this side, Bucky, who faced this power directly, felt dizzy, and when he came to his senses, it was too late. No. Puff. A sharp pain came from his back. Bucky's spine was forcibly pulled out by Charlotte, and his clothes were instantly stained red with blood. Bucky, who had lost all his strength, fell to his knees. He groaned in pain, his eyes were stubborn, and he refused to wail like a Klesi without caring about his image. He even couldn't help laughing. Because he succeeded. Chapter 79, Gene Destroyer. At the moment, when Charlotte pulled out the spine, the spider sense in his heart frantically warned him. But it was too late. Puff, the black barbs on the surface of the spine easily broke through the defense of the nanometal and then pierced his fingers. In just a moment, Charlotte's fingers were paralyzed, and the black spine fell to the ground. Looking down, the nanometal on his palm retreated, and his fingertips were already festering, and it continued to spread to the entire palm. Charlotte frowned first, and then sighed. Can you tell me what this is? He looked at Bucky, who was lingering on. Seeing that Charlotte's palm was festering rapidly, but it did not spread to the body, the arc of Bucky's mouth disappeared, but he did not despair. Your superpowers come from mutant spiders, but the gene destroyers targeting mutant spiders don't seem to hurt you as much as you imagined. Gene destroyers? Charlotte thought thoughtfully. Bucky nodded. Yes, in the few days I disappeared, I made a lot of preparations, just to kill you completely. But I won't die. Charlotte's tone was calm, but his heart sank. After merging with the Titan's body, the gene destroyer targeting Spider-Man's physique is not fatal to him, but he can feel that his body has become extremely weak under the influence of the gene destroyer. There is only one way to stop the degeneration of superpowers. Charlotte's words also made Bucky misunderstand. He said with certainty, you will definitely die. The gene destroyer will completely destroy all your mutant regeneration cells. Is it worth sacrificing yourself for, Steve? Charlotte looked at Bucky in front of her, very puzzled. Bucky smiled. You also have friends, but I'm not sure if you can understand me. He missed the past. When he first met Steve, that guy was still a rookie who knew nothing. In addition to Carter, it was he who taught Steve how to be an excellent soldier. Steve was physically weak, but he was sincere, kind, and had a strong sense of justice. He admired Steve, and Steve respected him very much, and they became good friends. Before Steve accepted the super soldier experiment, he persuaded Steve, but Steve still decided to participate in that experiment. Fortunately, Steve succeeded, but misfortune soon came. Steve became a mascot, which completely buried an excellent soldier. During the war, this was tantamount to cutting off Steve's future. He went to his superiors to argue, and tried every possible way to change the result. He witnessed the whole process of a hero full of justice gradually turning into an ambitious person. He will never forget the moment when he discovered the truth during a clearing operation. Steve, who was covering the retreat of Hydra, was stopped by him. During the battle, he fell off the cliff, but he did not die. While waiting for rescue, he was expectant, angry, and completely desperate. Everyone gave up on him, including his most beloved superiors and his compatriots who were brothers with him on weekdays. But Steve didn't. Before he was tortured by pain and cold to the point of committing suicide, Steve finally found him. In the ice and snow, Steve carried the injured man alone for a long time. He couldn't remember how many times Steve fell, but he only remembered that sentence. Bucky, I won't give up on you. Yes, it was this sentence that made Bucky realize that Steve might be his only friend in his life. His friend was treated unfairly, and he should help him, but he still hesitated. The education he received since childhood made it impossible for him to accept that he would join the evil Hydra. This was wrong. Until one day, the war was won, and Steve decided to withdraw from this era. He thought peace would come, but what he didn't expect was that the war had never ended. And it would never end. The warriors who slay dragons eventually become evil dragons? No, they were originally another evil dragon. At that moment, he finally realized that he was too naive. Finally, he decided to join Steve. He didn't know whether his decision was right or wrong. He only knew that only evil dragons could defeat evil dragons. But not long ago, because of the appearance of Spider-Man, everything was over. Steve died, and all he could do was to avenge his friends. The imperfect gene destroyer was his only hope. This would cost him his life, and he was not afraid of death. Because 70 years ago, he should have died under the cold cliff. If he died at that time, at least he would have some fantasy about the world after the war. The memories of the past came like a tide, and receded like a tide. Bucky slowly closed his eyes. Do it, while you still have strength. Charlotte looked at the other party quietly, and he also had a plan. Okay, I understand then. He raised his other hand, and used all his strength. Bang! He punched down, blood splashed on the black battlesuit. The moment he lost his vitality, the bomb in Bucky's body was finally triggered. The reason why Bucky had held on for so long was for this moment. Boom. The body was blown to pieces in the dazzling white light, and the surging flames were mixed with the destructive power against Spider-Man's most primitive genes. The nanometal quickly fell off in the close-range explosion, and Charlotte's body was completely decomposed under this force. At the last moment of his consciousness, he inexplicably thought of Norman's pumpkin bomb. A few seconds later, the spider logo fell to the ground, and the remaining nanometal quickly poured into it. Seeing this, the seriously injured Achilles picked up the spider logo with great pain, and couldn't help laughing. Ha ha ha, Spider-Man is finally dead. Ah, I'm dying too. Suddenly, Achilles fell to the ground and twitched, and the monster's body kept shedding large pieces of black debris and even began to dissolve. The side effects of swallowing mutant spiders plus the influence of blood mist, any one of them would kill him. He ran madly towards the city. Only Kingpin could save him. Not long after, another helicopter roared in. "Captain, there was a battle here." Coulson observed the scene. Carter scanned the traces of the explosion and frowned. "It looks like it's over. Look, Black Spine." Coulson exclaimed. "Take it back." "Yes." Then Agent Hill sent a message. "Captain, we didn't rescue those mutants. Their firepower is very strong, and we can't break through." "What?" Carter's face was solemn. "Kingpin, this guy seems to be in trouble." Coulson on the side said, "Yes, he not only controls the largest underground force in New York, but he is also an extremely scary guy. We once sent agents to lurk around him, but none of them survived. Is it not possible to use the power of the military?" Carter asked. Coulson shook his head. "His power is not as simple as it seems on the surface." Carter thought for a moment. "It seems to be very troublesome. Do we still need to look for Spider-Man?" Coulson asked. Carter shook his head. "Don't look for it anymore. Let's go back. If this guy was still alive, he wouldn't have left the Black Spine here." Sure enough, this guy was only good at playing resurrection games. Chapter 80 Killing Odin? Are you crazy? Cosmic Spider Web. Congratulations on receiving the invitation to the resurrection match. Will you participate in the resurrection match? Yes, no. The prompt message appeared in front of him, but Charlotte ignored it. He stood on the spider web and moved his body and found that his superpowers had indeed recovered. Recalling what happened just now, Charlotte was very curious about what material the barbs on the spine were made of. It is not difficult to break through the defense of nanometal, but Spider-Man, who has merged with the body of the Titan, has a better defense than nanometal, and the barbs can easily pierce the fingers. It is very likely to be vibranium. The self-destruct device in Bucky's body is also mixed with similar fragments, which can completely destroy and decompose his body. Otherwise, if it is just a gene destroyer, it is difficult to put him to death. There are always strange black technologies in the Marvel world, which is really hard to guard against. Charlotte shook his head. If the opponent used this kind of weapon against him at the beginning, he would most likely dodge it. With his defense, Bucky would no longer be a threat to Charlotte. So Bucky used himself as bait, and the effect was very significant. The invincible Spider-Man fell again. Once the villain becomes cautious, it is really scary. After a moment of thinking, he reset his body and started the resurrection game without hesitation. Ding. You have entered the resurrection game scene. New York at night. The top of the Empire State Building. Charlotte's figure slowly emerged from the void. Looking at the familiar antenna tower, he was silent. Deliberate, right? Scene. Marvel Multiverse. The eve of the Chitauri army invading the Earth. Task 1. Kill the Chitauri soldiers of this world, and the one who kills the most will receive a reward. Task 2. Kill the Avengers of this world, and the one who kills the most will receive a reward. Task 3. Kill the contestants this time, and the one who kills the most will receive a reward. Task 4. Kill Loki of this world to get a reward. Task 5. Kill Thanos of this world to get a reward. Task 6. Kill Odin of this world to get a reward. Reward 1. 1 resurrection quota. Reward 2. 100 kill points. Participants: Charlotte Parker, Steve Rogers, Bucky Barnes, Norman Osborn, Peter Parker, Loki, Stephen Strange, Maximum Dillon, Kurt Connors. Number of restarts: 18. 1 minute from the start of the mission. 24 hours from the end of the mission. Looking at the prompt information in front of him, Charlotte was silent again. This resurrection match is very simple and crude, which encourages a burst of killing. Killing other targets is fine, but what does it mean to kill Odin? Odin, the father of the gods, if he doesn't want to die, all the contestants together can't kill him. So basically we can rule out mission 6, and mission 5 can also be ruled out. Who knows where Thanos is hiding? This resurrection match is very murderous, and he can foresee the chaos that will follow. As expected, just after the 1-minute countdown ended, a strong blue light suddenly burst out from the bustling downtown not far away. Zizzy instantly, the lights in the surrounding large urban areas began to flicker continuously, and the visible arcs of electricity gathered madly towards the blue light. Maximum the Electric Man. Charlotte guessed in his heart and immediately jumped down from the top of the tall building. The wind was howling, and he turned on the glider device under his armpit and flew towards the direction of the blue light. According to his successful experience in the resurrection match, he must be reckless at the beginning. Wherever he passed, citizens looked at the figure flying in the tall buildings and exclaimed, "Oh, what is that? A new superhero? Never seen it before. He looks like a bug." Not long after, Charlotte approached the scene of the incident. He flew into the dark alley and tapped the spider logo on his chest. While the Nanometal quickly retreated, and Charlotte tidied his red and blue coat, put on a hood, and disguised himself as an ordinary citizen, and walked out of the alley. At this time, in the center of the street, the blue arcs became more and more dazzling. The blue figures in the arcs held cables and absorbed the city's electricity crazily. Zzzz, the blue arcs were spreading wildly. Under the shining electric light, the dense blood vessels under Maximum's blue skin were clearly visible. His whole body seemed to be made entirely of electric current, dangerous and mysterious. Nearby, there were still many citizens hiding in the dark to watch this scene. Oh my god, he is absorbing electric current. Is he the god of electricity? No, he should be called Thor. Oh my god, Thor looks like this in the world of superheroes. No matter how dangerous the place is, there is no shortage of spectators. Charlotte squeezed into the crowd and watched the scene quietly. He did not rush out to stop this guy. After all, he did not have the reaction ability of the Amazing Spider-Man that could be compared to electric light. This guy absorbed so much electricity, and his strength expanded to the peak. If he was entangled by the opponent, it would be easy for other contestants to pick him up. "Hey, I found you." Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded behind him. Charlotte turned around and saw that old Steve had also changed into casual clothes. The shield in his hand was wrapped with rags, and he was obviously afraid that other contestants would discover his existence. "Great, I can play the resurrection match with you again." Old Steve was very happy. Charlotte's face darkened. "I suspect you have other meanings in this sentence. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy." Old Steve stepped forward and said with a face full of complaints, "At least in the next 24 hours, there will be a familiar person who can accompany me. Now he is just a lonely old man who longs for company. You have worked hard." Charlotte patted the other's shoulder and comforted him. "Don't be discouraged. If there is a reward for increasing life after the resurrection match, you don't have to continue to play the resurrection match. Let's talk about it later. After all, we don't know if we can win." Old Steve sighed. "I really envy Stark. He must be telling Morgan a bedtime story now." Hearing this, Charlotte raised her eyebrows. "It will take some time for you to die after you are resurrected. You failed to be resurrected last time, but Natasha should have thought of your situation. She will definitely dig out your coffin. You may have seen her." Old Steve nodded. "Yes, but only for less than a minute." After he finished speaking, the electric arc in the center of the street flashed for a moment, and the escaped current began to spread in all directions. Zizzy boom. As the electric arc swept indiscriminately, shops and cars on the roadside burst into flames one after another, and the onlookers began to flee. Run. Thor is killing people in the crowd. Old Steve subconsciously raised his shield to block the spreading electric current for everyone. At the same time, a roar came from the night sky, and the Quinjet quickly arrived at the scene. The young captain holding a shield jumped to the ground. "Hey, are you the Thor that Nick mentioned? Stop it quickly." Chapter 81, Malay, Spider-Man must die. Seeing that the arc was still spreading wantonly, the young Steve, wearing a stage uniform from the last century, threw out his shield with all his might. Whooshes before the shield could get close to Maximum, the surging arc shot out for a moment, and the shield immediately fell to the ground and spun in circles. Steve. How to fight criminals in this era. He raised his hand to scratch his head, but found that his half hood was a bit of a hindrance. "Old Popsicle, you look lame." With the exclamations of the citizens, the golden and red mark armor flew over the night sky. Boom. Energy pulses fell from the sky, and the blue Maximum was immediately blasted into the shops on the street by the impact. Oh, it's Iron Man. It's Mr. Stark. So cool. I must vote for him this time and let him become the mayor of New York. As the mark armor fell to the ground, drones flew over the heads of the crowd, and then a lot of money fell from the sky. Oh my god, look. So much money. I'm rich. Immediately, the citizens around rushed into the street regardless of the threat of the Electric Man, and frantically scrambled for the money falling from the sky. Tony took off his helmet, and waved to the citizens and smiled. Thank you for your support. Please be sure to vote for me. I will bring more wealth to New York. Charlotte. This Tony is not right. Zizzy then. Arcs of electricity burst out from the shops on the street, and Maximum, who was filled with a terrifying aura, floated in the air surrounded by arcs. Iron Man, you pissed me off. Maximum roared, and when he raised his hand, a blue arc of electricity hundreds of meters long swept across the street, and the citizens screamed and fled again. Zizzy. Boom. Covered by arcs of electricity, the mark armor quickly rose into the air. Power baby, please calm down. I'll give you money, lots of money, but you have to promise to vote for me. The mark armor dodged left and right in the air. Tony tried to appease him, but to no avail. Sir, Spider-Man is spotted nearby. Tony was delighted when he suddenly heard Jarvis' voice. You finally showed up, Charlotte Parker. In the virtual screen in front of him, Jarvis locked onto the figure in the crowd through facial recognition. It was this guy who saved his life with the symbiote cells. Hey, Spider-Man, see you again. The mark armor dodged the arc and dived down. Tony landed on the ground to stop Charlotte. Where's your cool black suit? He asked. Charlotte. It turned out to be this guy. You recognized the wrong person. He lowered his hood and turned to leave. If he had known, he would have worn a mask throughout the second resurrection match. He didn't expect to come to the universe of the symbiote Tony again. Now that he was recognized by this guy, he would be in trouble. Hey, old popsicle, I saw you too. At this time, Tony turned around and called out to the old Steve who was trying to slip away. The way you left last time was very special. Later, when I met the young Steve and Natasha, I knew where you came from. Tony was halfway through his words when the violent arc of electricity swept his figure into the alley. Seeing that there was no one in front of him, the old Steve blinked. From what? The next second, a blood-colored mist burst out from the crowd, and a familiar figure rushed towards Charlotte at a rapid speed. Ha ha ha, I found you, Charlotte Parker. I know the secret of your resurrection. The blood mist spread quickly, and Hydra Steve suddenly leaped up, and the hideous blood-colored tentacles extended from his back, with a terrifying momentum. Boom. The blood-colored tentacles whipped down, and Charlotte immediately fired Spider Silk to avoid it. He landed on the billboard on the side of the road, and looking at the extremely excited Hydra Steve, he had a headache. It's all Tony in this world. Why did he shout so loudly? On the other side, young Steve just picked up his shield and saw another self suddenly jump out and turned into a red octopus monster, and he was stunned. Is what Stark said true? He suddenly remembered that when he first met Stark, the other party told him about parallel time and space. He also claimed to have seen another Steve and Natasha. Looking at the figure on the roadside billboard again, the red and blue metal quickly spread over the boy's body. It seems that he is the Spider-Man mentioned by Stark, but it seems not to be black. Boom. As the billboard was violently destroyed by the bloody tentacles, the red and blue figure flew away towards the roof. Ha ha ha, little Charlotte, I'll let you win last time. This time you will definitely not be able to escape. The green demon flew over from the night sky at a high speed, and the pumpkin bomb exploded. Boom, the violent heat wave swept across, and Charlotte's figure flew out of it against the raging flames. What? Bang. As the two figures collided in mid-air, Norman screamed and fell from the air. How is it possible? He has become stronger again, he exclaimed. Hydra Steve glanced at the useless Norman and cursed. Waste, hurry up and chase him. We can't let him revive this time. Spider-Man must die. After that, the blood-colored tentacles quickly climbed the wall and dragged his body in the direction where Charlotte left. Damn guy, dare to order me. Looking at the back of Hydra Steve, Norman's face was gloomy, but he quickly got up and continued to chase. He wanted to use this guy to help him get a place to revive. At the same time, Maximum, the electric man who was fighting with Tony, also heard the 3 words Spider-Man. His pupils suddenly shrank, and his anger increased. Spider-Man, I hate you. With a roar, Maximum abandoned Tony without hesitation, and instantly turned into an arc, and disappeared into the night sky. Is this considered leaving midway? Tony was stunned, and then Jarvis reminded him. Sir, the armor's energy is 300%. Wow, you are indeed the electric baby, it's awesome. Tony's feet burst into flames, and he chased in the direction where the electric man disappeared. How could he miss such an opportunity to improve his favorability? Whether he can become the mayor depends on this action. But the other party is too fast, and he may not be able to catch up. Forget it, it's more practical to throw some money everywhere. The scary guys left one after another, and the old Steve breathed a sigh of relief. Little spider, come on, use your superpowers to kill them, I believe in you. After cheering in the air, he came to the young Steve. Hey, you should change your uniform, you really look like a drama actor. The old Steve was very disgusted. The young Steve looked at the old man in front of him, his eyes fell on the shield in the other's hand. Who are you? He was shocked. Yes, I'm you, the other you. The old Steve's face was solemn. A group of scary guys have come to this world. Take me to Scenic, we need to make a plan. Then your friend. Yes, Spider-Man, what should he do? He is alone. Young Steve asked. Don't worry about him, his superpowers are terrifying. Superpowers? Yes. Old Steve came closer and said mysteriously, his superpower can sense shit. What? Young Steve was shocked. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 80 to the 4 villains. In the corner of the abandoned factory, Charlotte sneezed violently. Which bastard is saying bad things about me behind my back? He rubbed the tip of his nose and leaned forward slightly. Outside the window, green tail flames streaked across the night sky, and blood-colored mist spread wantonly. With an arc of electricity breaking through the air, Charlotte couldn't help but hold his forehead. Norman and the Hydra captain are fine, but he really didn't provoke the electric man. I can't take all the blame, right? The difficulty of the resurrection match is partly due to these guys, who died in his hands. It's hard for him to imagine what the resurrection match will be like in the future. The famous 5-star General MacArthur once said that it is very unprofessional to mix personal grudges in the game. After he complained in his heart, he temporarily gave up the task of killing the contestants. As long as he appears, most of the contestants will point their spearheads at him. 1 or 2 are okay, but if the 4 villains come together, he will have no chance of winning. Why are there 4 villains? Because the 4th villain appeared. Crack, a black shadow emerged at the factory gate, and the metal arm was shattered in the blood-colored mist. The ferocious blood-colored claws tore the concrete stone pillars, and a loud noise suddenly rose. Boom. The broken concrete stone pillars were thrown out like giant javelins in Bucky's hands. Charlotte flew onto the stone pillars and jumped wildly, smashing a hole in the ceiling with one head, and disappeared from Bucky's sight in an instant. He's here, Bucky shouted, and the blood-colored tentacles swept over violently, surrounded by green tail flames and blue arcs. Gaga, little Charlotte, you can't run away. Norman threw pumpkin bombs one after another, and the factory exploded continuously in an instant. Damn Norman, we are still in there. Bucky cursed. Oh, sorry, I only have eyes for him and not you. Norman rode the flying skateboard and rushed towards Charlotte, who emerged from the fire, but someone was faster than him. Ziz, the blue arc flashed by and disappeared into the raging sea of fire in the blink of an eye. Spider-Man, I hate you. Maximum rushed in front of Charlotte, and the mighty electric current hit him wantonly. But Charlotte went forward without hesitation, raised his hand, and punched the arc that condensed into substance. Boom. In an instant, the air exploded, the sea of fire at the scene became distorted, and the residual arc dissipated, and nano-metal fragments flew all over the sky. Charlotte's exposed fist was flowing with purple lines, and there was no sign of being burned by the arc. Electro can absorb a lot of electricity, and his body is also energy, but the output power is limited, and the energy utilization rate is extremely low, wasting a lot of electricity all the time. In short, it is not as good as Hammer God. Spider-Man, who has merged with the body of Titan, has a physique that is no less resistant to magic than the amazing Spider-Man. The only trouble that Electro can cause to Charlotte is his lightning fast speed. Being entangled by this guy, he has no chance to kill other contestants. What? Seeing Charlotte rushing towards him at an unreduced speed, Maximum's face changed. This Spider-Man is wrong. Puff. The next moment, Charlotte's body instantly shattered the body of the Electric Man like a cannonball and disappeared from everyone's sight. In just 3 seconds, the figure of the Electric Man quickly condensed in the electric arc. Blue Waste, what are you doing? Stop him. At this time, Hydra Steve chased after him. Seeing Charlotte escape easily, he was immediately furious and cursed at the Electric Man. What did you say? Maximum, who felt insulted, was furious, and his blue pupils were full of arcs. Boom. The blue body burst into a strong electric current. Hydra Steve only had time to stop the blood-colored tentacles in front of him, and then he was covered by endless arcs. Zizzy puff puff. Puff. In an instant, the blood-colored tentacles emitted black smoke, and the smell of barbecue spread. Hydra Steve's body could not defend against the terrifying arc, and the charred flesh and blood kept falling off and growing again. Bucky saw this, and immediately flew towards Electro, trying to tear the arc with his bloody claws. Boom. Maximum just gave him a look, and Bucky's body was swept by arcs, and he fell to the ground in the arcs. You all bullied me, I'm going to make you pay. Maximum roared, and the arcs spreading on his body became more violent. Norman saw this, and turned around, and left the scene on his flying skateboard without hesitation. Stupid, you lose your mind when you meet Spider-Man. Good luck to you. The electric current in the factory in the distance surged, and there were explosions from time to time. Charlotte looked back, and saw that Maximum didn't chase him, and he couldn't help but feel a little confused. He was ready to be entangled by Maximum. After all, that guy was really fast. Inexplicably escaping from the encirclement, Charlotte flew leisurely towards the city. Except for Maximum, who was in urgent need of electricity, the other contestants did not make too much noise at the first time, obviously guarding against being backstabbed by other contestants. The captain of Hydra and his men were all together, so he had no chance to kill them. Loki hadn't opened the space wormhole, and the Chitauri army hadn't invaded the Earth yet. The Avengers weren't that hard to kill, but he was unlucky enough to anger Dr. Banner, and Charlotte couldn't stand Hulk's madness. Who knows how strong the Hulk in this universe is? Even the movie version of Hulk is extremely dangerous, and no one can defeat him except Thanos. Besides, the Avengers in the multiverse all have a bit of luck, and Charlotte doesn't like to compete with others. He knows himself. There's no need to waste a restart. So the only target left is Loki. As for Thanos and Odin, Charlotte didn't think about it at all. It's just a bad taste. Whoever believes it will be unlucky. So there's only one question next. Where is Loki? Between the tall buildings, Charlotte flew down to the smooth glass curtain wall and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. If there is no other information, he can only hit around like a headless spider, which is very inefficient. Oh, Tony. Thinking of this scumbag, Charlotte turned and looked at the iconic building in the distance. Stark Tower. Immediately, he jumped down from the curtain wall, shooting spider silk along the way, and flying towards Stark Tower. Not long after, Charlotte quietly climbed to the top floor of the building. Looking at the luxurious private swimming pool on the top floor, he nodded slightly. The taste of the two Tonys is exactly the same. Hey, do you know where Tony is? He knocked on the French window, scaring Pepper in the room. Oh shit. Such a big bug. No, you are Spider-Man? Pepper reacted. Tony told her about Spider-Man after he came back. Yes, I have something to do with him. Charlotte said outside the window. Pepper pointed to the other side, indicating that the door was over there. Okay, thank you. Walking into the house, Charlotte looked at the simple but very luxurious furniture and artwork. This was his first time in Tony's living area. Want a cup of coffee? Pepper asked a little embarrassedly while holding a cup of coffee. This was also her first time to come into contact with other superheroes, because Carlson, who often visited, did not count. Thanks to book friend 14,124,044,516,515 for the 100 points. Thanks to Sptir for the 500 points. Thanks to book friend 202008111318081887 for the 100 points. Thanks to Abkba for the 100 points. Thanks to those big night tours for the 300 points. Chapter 83 I get along with superheroes. Okay, thank you. Charlotte tapped the spider logo on his chest, and the metal mask retreated, revealing a young face. There is no need to hide your identity in this world. Anyway, you won't be here for long. Oh, I didn't expect you to be a child. Pepper looked surprised, and the tension in her heart was slightly relieved. Yes, and a good child. Charlotte took the coffee and looked at it carefully. Is this Black Ivory or Civet Cat? Maybe Saint Helena. What? Pepper was stunned. Sorry, I learned all this on the internet. Charlotte took a sip and then looked very happy. This must be very expensive? He asked casually. Pepper pointed to a garden outside the window. This is what Tony planted himself. If you like it, I can give it all to you. He doesn't drink it normally. Charlotte. Ahem. No, thank you. I don't drink it normally either. He put down the cup a little embarrassedly and picked up the horn artwork next to him to play with it. If you like it, I can give it to you. Pepper said. Really? Then Charlotte glanced at the photo on the wall casually and then silently put it down. It turned out to be something that the big African brother used to cover his shame. Hey, it's really big. Actually I came to find Tony. I've already notified him. Okay, I'll wait for him. After that, the two were silent again. Well, you want to drink expensive coffee? I have it here too. Little Pepper tried. Charlotte nodded. Thank you very much. I only drink the most expensive. You are really a child. Little Pepper laughed and then went to prepare coffee beans. Can you tell me why you want to save Tony? She asked curiously while grinding the beans. Charlotte sat on the sofa to relax. There's no special reason. He's lucky. Really? Pepper said absent-mindedly. Since he came back, I can always hear him talking to himself, but he won't tell me anything. I'm worried that he has a mental problem. Tony is indeed prone to anxiety. Charlotte thought for a while, but you don't have to worry. He just has a new friend. New friend? Yes, a very new friend. Charlotte smiled. Isn't the symbiote Tony's new friend? After having the symbiote, Tony's reactor is in an external state, and the injury to his heart can't affect him at all. And with the amplification of the symbiote, Tony can protect himself without relying on the armor. Much happier than the other Tony. Suddenly, Charlotte turned around and looked at the night outside the window, frowning slightly. He just felt peeping. It seems that a contestant is planning to attack Tony. Or boom at this time. A fire came from the night sky, and the Quinjet slowly floated outside the French window. The cabin opened, and old Steve waved. Hey, Spider-Man, follow me. Beside him, Tony smiled and greeted. See you again. Want to eat together? He raised the hamburger in his hand. Charlotte shot her spider silk and swung into the cabin. No, thank you. I only eat Madonna 4 hamburgers. Tony scratched his temple, looking puzzled. She also sells hamburgers? As the cabin closed, Tony controlled the Quinjet to rush into the sky. Old Steve's face was serious. Spider-Man, you use your... Wait, I don't have that kind of superpower now. Charlotte interrupted him. No? Old Steve shook his head. Well, in this case, this resurrection match will be very dangerous. Whether it was another Loki or Doctor Strange, he knew very well how troublesome these two guys were. Doctor Strange was okay. After all, he was the Sorcerer Supreme. But Loki's moral bottom line was hard to say. Are they still not moving? Charlotte asked. Old Steve thought for a moment. In addition to the guys who were chasing you, there is also Peter Parker whom we met last time. He killed someone and then disappeared. There is also Loki, who caused chaos in the opera house and then met another Loki. They had a fight and finally disappeared. Venom Parker? After hearing this, Charlotte recalled the duel with Venom Parker in the second resurrection match. Only at certain moments can Peter Parker temporarily break away from the influence of the symbiote and regain self-awareness. In most other cases, this guy's in a state of slacking off, allowing the symbiote to move freely in his body. Peter Parker has completely given up on himself. For him, it doesn't matter whether he can win the resurrection match. What matters is to keep himself full. As for the other Loki, he asked old Steve, where is the opera house where Loki is? It's on Hamlet Street. Why do you ask that? Nothing. I can answer it next time you ask me. Next time. Old Steve was puzzled. This guy always said strange things. But it is very likely that it is key information revealed to him, so he has to write it down. He took out a small notebook to record it. Charlotte. The harder I work, the more sad I feel. Soon, Quinjet fighters surged into the sky, and a huge space carrier slowly emerged from stealth mode. We are here. This is the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony turned around and smiled. How is it? Pretty good, right? Old Steve said calmly. It looks ordinary now. It's not like he hasn't seen it before. Charlotte looked at the huge space carrier and nodded. Anyway, it's much more impressive than the S.H.I.E.L.D. in my world. Boom. As the Quinjet fighter slowly landed on the deck runway, Tony led the two of them down the cabin. Hey, Agent Coulson, is the meeting arranged? He asked Coulson, who came to greet him. It's ready. Please follow me. Coulson looked at Charlotte and old Steve, then led the three to the meeting room. Along the way, the agents they met along the way cast curious eyes. This old man looks familiar. Yes, I think he looks like the captain too. No, I mean the other person. In the corridor, listening to the discussion of the agents behind him, Charlotte glanced at old Steve. Do you know who you look like? He said. Old Steve shrugged. Who else could it be, except the younger me? No, I mean, you are eligible to run for election. Run for election? Tony, who was very sensitive to this word, paused and looked back at Charlotte. Can you vote for me? Sorry, I don't have a legal identity here. Well, that's a pity. Soon, several people walked into the conference room, where Nick Fury and others had been waiting for a long time. You are finally here. Nick Fury stood up. Hello, I'm Nick Fury, the commander here. I know, we are old friends. Old Steve shook hands with the other party, then looked at Charlotte. Charlotte thought for a while. In fact, we are old friends too. He scratched his forehead subconsciously. Hearing this, Nick Fury smiled slightly. It's worthy of me to be able to get along with superheroes in any world. Good news. Sanjiang on Sunday. I will not forget the promise of updating the books on the shelves. Thanks to my brothers for their support. I'm going to write and save the manuscripts. Poor. Chapter 84. 1v1 duel. No one can call for help. After everyone took their seats, Nick Fury looked at Charlotte. I heard from Tony that you are from another universe. He had seen the captain, but he had never heard of Spider-Man, so of course he was most curious. The other Avengers at the scene also looked at Charlotte and old Steve curiously. Charlotte didn't care about the looks of the crowd. He nodded and said, yes, not only us, but also some troublesome guys came here. Nick Fury frowned. How did you get here? Charlotte's face was calm. This is a secret. But if you want to cooperate, everyone needs to be honest. Nick Fury wanted to know the truth. Charlotte just glanced at the other party. This is cooperation, but I'm also saving you. You need to be honest, but I don't. Hearing this, Nick Fury and the people present changed their faces slightly. Old Steve's eyes became strange, and he leaned close to Charlotte and whispered, what are you doing? We need their help. Charlotte paused. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Why? The mood suddenly came. Aren't you old friends? I lied to him. Old Steve. Before Nick Fury could speak, Natasha at the table frowned and said, if I'm not mistaken, you are being hunted by those guys. You need us to save you. Young Steve was a little unconvinced. Charlotte shrugged. If there are no other troublesome guys, then I'm the one hunting them. He's right. Tony said, you don't know how powerful Spider-Man is, but I know that I believe what he said is right. And another terrible spider monster has also come here. We need Charlotte to help us solve the problem. Stark, you are our man. Young Steve reminded. Tony smiled. Sorry, I don't want to be teammates with you. Except for Dr. Banner, whom I admire. You don't play a big role in my eyes. As soon as this was said, there was a brief silence at the scene. In the corner, the honest man Banner, who was named, looked at the tense atmosphere at the scene and lowered his head silently. Don't call me, don't call me, he prayed in his heart. Tony's arrogance also angered young Steve and Natasha. Stark, you're going too far, Natasha said coldly. Young Steve stood up and looked Tony in the eyes. I knew the first time I saw you that you are different from us. You are an arrogant arms dealer. Without that armor, you are nothing. Tony gradually got angry. He stood up and looked at Steve in front of him, not giving in. Without my father's shield and super serum, what are you, soldier? Young Steve took a deep breath. Let's find a place to fight tomorrow. I will let you know who I am. Now, old popsicle, don't call anyone. Tony sneered and turned to walk out of the meeting room. Stark, we have to make a plan now. Nick Fury hurriedly stopped Tony. I never have a plan, Tony said without turning his head. Young Steve quickly passed Nick Fury. Even if I have one, it's tomorrow's plan. Steve, come back. Seeing the two leave the meeting room one after another, Nick Fury couldn't help but have a headache. Charlotte explained, in my world, he is the leader of Hydra, and he is different from the Steve you know. What? As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and subconsciously looked at the old Steve. Why are you looking at me? I'm innocent. The old Steve felt uncomfortable all over. He said to Charlotte, are you sure? Of course, I killed him myself, Charlotte said. Hearing this, a chill ran up the old Steve's back. No wonder you look at me with the wrong look in your eyes. It's wrong for you to bring personal grudges into the game. Charlotte rolled his eyes. That's because I suspect you are saying bad things about me behind my back. No, absolutely not. The old Steve patted his chest to assure. Charlotte didn't bother to pay attention to this guy, and he continued to introduce. The second one is Bucky Barnes, a friend of the captain of Hydra. They all have the power of Hydra and are very powerful. The third green demon is also one of the people chasing me. His name is Norman Osborn. You have to be careful of his pumpkin bomb. The fourth one is Maximum the Electric Man. His ability can paralyze the power system of the entire city. There are also Peter Parker, Loki, Stephen Strange, and Professor Kurt. As Charlotte finished the introduction, everyone's face was extremely ugly. These guys are much more terrible than imagined. So many people came to our world. What is their purpose? Nick Fury asked. Charlotte was a little thirsty, and he said to Banner in the corner, is there any water? Yes. The honest man Banner finally found his role and hurried to pour water. And the old Steve tactfully explained the contestants' several tasks to Nick Fury. There was no obstruction of any mysterious power in this process, so Charlotte was relieved. After hearing what the old Steve said, everyone was frightened. Are they going to kill all the Avengers? They won't even let their own people go. It's terrifying. And what are the Chitauri soldiers? Will they definitely invade the Earth? The legendary Odin, the father of the gods, and Thor's father are also their targets. It's crazy. Oh no, Stark and Steve are out. What if? With Natasha's exclamation, Nick Fury finally reacted. They are likely to be ambushed. Call them back quickly. It's too late. They've already left. Coulson ran over and said. Nick Fury looked at Charlotte with a gloomy face. Why didn't you tell me earlier, so that I could stop them? Charlotte shrugged. I don't have the habit of getting involved in other people's quarrels. Tony and Steve left SHIELD and just tried to see if anyone was watching here. Thanks to Wheel of Fortune, who likes pranks, for the 2000 points. Chapter 85. There is no cosmic cube in this world. Abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of New York. Boom, the Quinjet flew across the night sky, and young Steve landed smoothly with the help of a parachute. Crack. On the roof, Tony, wearing the Mark armor, looked down at Steve, who had just arrived. Is there a traffic jam, old popsicle? He laughed. Young Steve tightly grasped the shield in his hand, intending to vent all his dissatisfaction. Stark, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Tony looked indifferent, but the next moment he looked behind Steve and frowned. We agreed not to call anyone. Young Steve was stunned. I didn't call anyone. He subconsciously turned around and looked shocked. Late at night, space carrier. Aren't they back yet? In the conference room, Nick Fury became more and more anxious. Barton was kidnapped, and he didn't have many superheroes to use. This time he relied on these two guys. Once the two of them got into trouble, his Avengers plan would face a complete collapse. Coulson also knew Nick Fury's difficulties. He shook his head and said, "We have sent people to chase them. There will be news soon." As he spoke, the communicator rang, and Coulson quickly answered it. "They are missing. We only found the fighter plane he left nearby." "What?" Hearing this, Nick Fury's face turned ugly. Something must have happened to them. "Send someone to keep an eye on Stark Tower," Old Steve suddenly said. Nick Fury frowned. "Why?" Old Steve said, "Because Loki will open a space wormhole there to welcome the Chitauri army." "Wormhole? God's magic?" Old Steve explained. "You need the cosmic cube to open a space wormhole, which is why Loki wants to steal the cosmic cube." "What is the cosmic cube?" Nick Fury asked again. "There is no cosmic cube in this world." Old Steve was stunned. Charlotte frowned. "Without the space gem, it's hard to say how the Chitauri army will invade the Earth." Old Steve looked grim. "Is this the difference of the multiverse? Not every universe has infinite gems." Charlotte said his guess, and then continued to look down at the PDA in his hand. The New York map above marked many red dots, which were all places where the contestants had appeared, and they were constantly updated. Norman, Professor Kurt, Peter Parker, Maximum the Electro, Steve the Hydra, and Bucky all found their traces. But they moved very fast, and the time they appeared in the monitoring range would not exceed 3 minutes. With his speed, he had no time to stop them. The intelligence system of S.H.I.E.L.D. is advanced enough, but it is impossible to cover every corner of the city 100%. So until now, Charlotte has not locked on Doctor Strange. He is worthy of being the mysterious supreme sorcerer. Then he moved his fingers slightly, and the computer screen showed a video of the battle between Electro and Steve the Hydra near the abandoned warehouse. After Charlotte left, they fought, but there was no winner. Although Electro is very fast, his power output cannot break Charlotte's defense. But the defense of Hydra, Steve and Bucky is only average. If they did not have terrible self-healing ability, they would have been defeated by Electro long ago. In the end, Electro was short of power because the battle dragged on for too long, and Hydra, Steve and Bucky found a chance to escape. Charlotte felt a little pity. If he had known, he would have killed him back. No, if he went back, these guys would have a common goal, and would still beat him together. Now Maximum the Electro has left the city, and the power plant in the suburbs is probably in trouble. Looking at the video of Hamlet Street again, the two lockers appeared one after another, but Thor never appeared. Because of the appearance of the contestants, the original plot has deviated greatly, and it is completely impossible to use the God's perspective to revitalize this chess game. But without the God's perspective, Charlotte can create a God's perspective. In short, while he gets the resurrection quota, he also has to prevent Hydra, Steve and Bucky from successfully getting the resurrection quota, otherwise it will be another troublesome thing. Thinking of this, Charlotte locked the place where Tony and Steve had an appointment to fight. The Quinjet was parked nearby, which meant that was where they last appeared. He memorized the coordinates one by one. On the side, old Steve secretly asked Dr. Banner, "What level of soldier is Steve in this world?" Banner thought for a moment. "It seems to be a lieutenant." Old Steve straightened his back immediately. "I'm a captain." "But you are so old, and you are still only a captain," Banner said weakly. Old Steve's face turned black. "That's because I retired early." At the main seat, Nick Fury received news of contestants fighting in the city one after another. He looked at Charlotte and old Steve. "Since it is a cooperation, I need you to stop them. It is difficult for our people to do this. They can't be caught." Without waiting for old Steve to agree, Charlotte spoke first. "They are also worried about being discovered by other contestants. The battle will not last more than 3 minutes. By the time we go over, they will have left. Are we going to let them do whatever they want?" Natasha frowned. Charlotte glanced at him. "You should prepare for the Chitauri invasion now. The other contestants are looking forward to their arrival. Once the Chitauri army arrives on Earth, the contestants will have a greater chance of getting a spot in the resurrection. They will not miss this opportunity." Hearing this, Nick Fury looked at Charlotte deeply, and then got up, and went to the command room to make a plan. After Nick Fury left, Natasha followed closely. Seeing this, old Steve was very puzzled. "Little spider, what are you going to do? Are you going to let Loki open the space wormhole? Didn't the egghead say that there is no space gem in this world? What will happen next is impossible to predict. Charlotte shrugged. After that, he stood up and launched spider silk in the conference room, set up a spider web hammock, and planned to have a good rest. Little spider, I also want to have a green, environmentally friendly and pollution-free spider web hammock. Old Steve was full of envy. Charlotte took off the spider silk launcher and threw it to the other party. You do it yourself. Thank you. You know old people can't stay up late. I really miss the old me. I could spend a whole day back then. Old Steve fiddled with the spider silk launcher. Swoosh. White spider silk shot out, his old face full of excitement, like a child who was almost 200 years old. Great. It doesn't have to be so great. Banner stretched out his hand to pull off the spider silk on his face, daring to speak but not angry. Well, I'm still here. Sorry, I didn't see you. Don't be angry. Old Steve hurried to comfort him. He knew very well how terrible Dr. Banner was when he was angry. Banner waved his hand to show that he was fine, but he sighed in his heart. Sure enough, no one would joke with him as confidently as Tony did. Treating him like a normal person was what he really wanted. Chapter 86. But there is a space gem. As the sky gradually brightened, the SHIELD agents became busier. Commander, the agents monitoring Stark Tower have lost contact. What? Nick Fury looked grim. Why didn't you report it in advance? Sorry, they were all normal before. Fuck, they must have been hypnotized by Loki like Barton. Nick Fury cursed. The next moment, a dazzling blue beam shot up from Stark Tower, slowly blooming a terrifying wormhole with a diameter of several thousand meters in the sky. The Chitauri army is coming, exactly the same as the wormhole back then. It's the space gem. By the window, old Steve suddenly exclaimed. Charlotte looked at the blue light that burst out in the city. His eyes narrowed slightly. Sure enough, Nick Fury didn't tell the truth. He thought our goal was also the cosmic cube, so he concealed it from us. Old Steve gritted his teeth. Shit, I never thought Nick would be so annoying. You said dirty words. I know, I'm so old. What can you do to me? Okay. Charlotte put on the spare spider silk launcher and began to stretch his muscles. I have a question. When you first woke up, you saw that your commander was a black boiled egg. What did you think? I thought this was hell. Old Steve quickly equipped himself. The existence of space gems in this world is a good thing for us. What happened later should be not much different from what I imagined. Charlotte nodded. If nothing unexpected happens, when those congressmen decide to use nuclear bombs to deal with the Chitauri army, our chance will come. Wait, you want to? Old Steve suddenly thought of something and looked surprised. Charlotte smiled and said, yes, you guessed right. He decided to copy Iron Man's anti-nuclear bomb operation in Avengers 1. A nuclear bomb blasted Temple 1 far away in outer space and became the MVP of this game. Wait, you bombed the Chitauri army with a nuclear bomb to get a resurrection spot. What should I do? Old Steve looked reluctant. Charlotte turned around and said, before that, I will help you kill those guys. Although it is a waste to give the resurrection spot to old Steve, it can at least make Hydra Steve lose the resurrection spot. The premise is that Tony and young Steve, who had arranged to fight in private, were not killed by this guy. The intelligence he controlled was still very limited. Soon, space carrier fighters were dispatched one after another, and the huge wormhole in the sky of the city continued to pour out Chitauri soldiers on flying vehicles. And then, huge Leviathan whales poured out of the wormhole, and the whole of New York fell into extreme chaos. Ah. Run. Aliens have invaded the Earth. You are so powerful that you can run so fast at this age and still have the energy to scream. I have something more powerful. The cunning old man tripped the young man next to him with his crutches, with a smug smile on his face. Ha ha ha, this way they will eat you first. This is the experience of the cunning old man. Bang, the laser flashed for a moment, and the old man's body was pierced. Looking at the old man who fell to the ground, the Chitauri soldiers in the air grinned cruelly. Lord Loki has ordered us to kill the elderly and children first. And we don't eat earthlings. Kid, you're right. The fighter plane flew high in the sky, and the red and blue figure swooped down at high speed, kicking the Chitauri soldiers off the aircraft. Look what I grabbed, Charlotte said excitedly. Boom, the next second, the aircraft shook continuously, and Charlotte frantically slapped the control panel of the aircraft. Fuck, I don't know how to use it. As the aircraft tilted and crashed into a tall building next to it, Charlotte jumped down and at the same time fired spider silk to lock the out of control aircraft and threw it to the passing Chitauri soldiers. Boom. Flames burst in the city, and the red and blue figures shuttled through the tall buildings, leaving behind crystal spider silk that was difficult to detect with the naked eye. Puff 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 boom. The aircraft that flew by at high speed was easily cut off by the spider silk, and flames exploded one after another. On the messy street covered by flames, the honest Dr. Banner arrived at the scene on a second-hand motorcycle. He looked up at the terrifying weight above his head and finally decided to release the violent beast in his body. The green skin continued to spread, and as the body grew rapidly, the beast-like roar resounded throughout the street. Boom. The green beast kicked the ground with its legs, and the invincible Hulk crushed into the belly of the whale with invincible power and wreaked havoc. Crack, crack, crack. In an instant, the fire inside the whale continued to burst, and the exoskeleton armor on the surface of the body also fell off, and it could no longer maintain the flying state. Bang! The giant creature fell diagonally from mid-air, plowing the streets along the way, and leaving hundreds of meters of terrifying gullies. Not bad, Mr. Hulk. The red and blue figure flew over the giant whale, leaving spider silk traps along the way, and the Chitauri soldiers who came to chase him were broken into pieces and fell on the battlefield. Found you, Spider-Man. The arc of electricity meandered through the city at a high speed, and Maximum's eyes were full of hatred. I admire you so much, but you killed me. Maximum roared and rushed over. Fighter planes flew over in the sky, and the 5-pointed star shield flew out from the hands of the old Steve. Boom. Charlotte took the shield and blocked it in front of him. The terrible arc rolled back and hit the building in an instant, splashing rubble all over the sky. This crazy fan, please be calm, he shouted in the direction of Maximum. You should worry about yourself first. With a loud bang, the wall not far away was smashed by the huge force, and the Hydra Steve rushed over quickly surrounded by blood-colored tentacles. Seeing this, Charlotte fired spider silk to fly to another building. You can't get a resurrection quota if you chase me like this. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that you can't be resurrected either. Stay in hell with us forever. Hydra Steve laughed hideously. Charlotte shrugged. Okay, you are wrong. After speaking, there was a loud bang from the wall behind him, and the blood-colored arm broke through the wall. Steve, you must live. Bucky roared as he pounced on Charlotte and activated the self-destruct device in his body without hesitation. Bucky. Boom. Dense fragments that were enough to tear Charlotte's body apart exploded, but Charlotte had already curled up in the shield. Dang, dang, dang. The heat wave invaded with fragments, and sparks flew on the surface of the shield, but it could not break through the shield and affect Charlotte's body. Bang. The horrible heat wave swept, and the shield fell diagonally on the street. Charlotte stood up and shook his body and fired spider silk to throw the black spine left by Bucky into the corner ruins. Spider-Man will not fall on the same spine. Have you modified the self-destruct program? Fortunately, I have a shield, he said to the Hydra Steve who came to kill him. Damn Spider-Man, it's all because of you. After Bucky died, the Hydra Steve, who was in a sad mood, was covered in blood mist, blood-colored sound waves spread, and the hideous tentacles whipped wantonly. Oh my, I'm the villain now. Charlotte retreated, leaving spider silk traps along the way to restrain the opponent's movements. At the same time, Maximum the Electric Man came again, and Charlotte shouted to the nearby, "Old man, it's your turn. Here I come." The next chapter will be released at noon. Chapter 87. Unfortunately, Spider-Man was fooled again. On the high-rise building, old Steve swung down with the help of Charlotte's spider silk launcher and skillfully adjusted the spider silk pattern to launch a large spider web. Zzzz. The Electric Man crashed into the spider web without time to brake, and the blue skin on his body suddenly flashed with sparks. The electricity stored in his body was guided by these spider silks to flow into the ground, and his blue body dimmed slightly. What? Maximum was shocked. Seeing this, old Steve shot out a large amount of spider silk again. Little spider, magnetized spider silk is useful. Just magnetizing the spider silk is not enough. You have to thank Dr. Banner for his help, Charlotte said. Another Leviathan whale landed with a rumble, and the Hulk on its back roared to the sky. The fierce breath made the surrounding Chitauri soldiers hesitate for a while. Seeing this, old Steve shuddered. I'll thank him in person when I have a chance in the future. At the same time, Charlotte held the crystal spider silk tightly in her palm, and the spider silk trap was tightened in an instant. The Hydra Steve, who was deeply trapped in it, lost the help of his tentacles. Damn, this kind of thing again. The tentacles were cut into pieces, and Hydra Steve's face changed drastically. Before the bloody flesh buds could wriggle and form tentacles, Charlotte shot out from the spider silk slingshot. Bang! Stepping on the head of the Hydra captain, Charlotte's 5 fingers formed claws and brazenly stabbed into the opponent's back. Puff. Ah. Instantly, the scene of blood and flesh flying all over made old Steve and Electro tremble with fear. Is he so cruel? Before he turned black, Electro took the opportunity to slip away from the spider web. He was going to recharge. However, Hydra Steve, who was pulled out of his back, showed a triumphant smile. Charlotte Parker, you've been fooled. What? Okay, I get it. Under the warning of the spider sense, the barbs on the surface of the spine had already broken through the nanometal and pierced into the skin. The fingers were tingling, and Charlotte's palm began to fester. Spider-Man did not fall on the same spine, but he was still fooled. Feeling weak, the shield in his hand fell to the ground. Charlotte's breathing became rapid, and he laughed. Bucky hastily blew himself up to lower my vigilance, and the barbs on his spine were transplanted into your body. You are sure that I will not be able to find this in the battle? Very good, you succeeded, and I will soon lose my superpowers. Before that, I want to know who your surgeon is. Ha ha ha, Charlotte Parker, you lose. Hydra Steve ignored Charlotte's nonsense. He grabbed the tentacle fragments around him and stuffed them into his mouth with a grin, so as to survive and gain more strength. You don't have the strength to kill me anymore, so the power of Hydra is still mine. I win. As he said, he picked up the black spine on the ground and wanted to put it back into the wound on his back in front of Charlotte. He wanted to see this guy's completely desperate expression. But unfortunately, Charlotte disappointed him. Hey, you seem to have forgotten something. Suddenly, Hydra Steve was patted on the shoulder, which made him look ugly. He had indeed forgotten that there were more than 2 of them here. Looking back, he saw the old Steve with a kind smile on his face. Young man, your memory is worse than mine. After saying that, he fired Spider Silk to roll up the shield, waved his hand to cut off the opponent's arm, and the black spine fell to the ground. Ah. Damn it, you should help me. Hydra Steve wailed in despair. You're right, I'll help you end your pain. Old Steve used his shield to end the opponent, and then quickly came to Charlotte. Your injuries seem to be very serious. Charlotte was already slumped on the ground at this time, and his weak body could not support him to complete the next plan. His face was pale. He looked up and glanced at the flames flying from the sky and shook his head. Sure enough, this game collapsed again. Ha ha ha, your battle is really fierce. At this time, Norman came late, and the smile under the mask was very proud. In the corner, the big green lizard poked its head out and grinned. So it's our turn. Spider-Man, you're done. You seem to be happy too early. Old Steve stood up and faced the 2 men. The breeze blew under his feet, and the muscles under his uniform suddenly swelled. The exaggerated strength tore the uniform apart and instantly turned into the image of a devil muscle man. The Dangerosaurus slightly frightened the 2 men, and Charlotte was also stunned. At this moment, in his eyes, the other party's back seemed to emit a sacred light, giving him enough sense of security. Old man, you are still working out at your age. You are really working hard. He gave him a thumbs up. Old Steve smiled and said, I'm a man who has returned from the resurrection match twice. I'm your trustworthy friend. Friend, delicious. Old friend, it's stuck in your teeth. What? The sudden strange voice made the 2 people's faces stiffen. At some point, the black venom monster was entrenched above the 2 people's heads, and disgusting mucus kept dripping. Charlotte knew very well that, even if the old Steve had been strengthened after 2 resurrection matches, he was still no match for Venom Parker. He couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat him at all. Restart. You have been eliminated and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be awarded the original Spider Silk mode +1. 18 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. Second revival match. In the night sky, Charlotte shook his wrist and the spider silk protein launched from it quickly expanded several times. When the white spider silk fell to the iron frame of the antenna tower, it was as thick as a hemp rope, which was very exaggerated. Charlotte. This reminded him of a Spider-Man playing with robots. He tried the various properties of the hemp rope spider silk. Well, it has no ductility at all, and the viscosity is also very low, but it is very strong, and will hardly decompose automatically. It can only be used like a hemp rope, and it can't swing spider silk at all. So it is another not very practical spider silk mode. But this time there are many restarts. If you are sure of successfully passing the level, you can brush up more spider silk modes. But the problem is that he is not sure now. He raised his hand and clicked the nano device and entered the coordinates he wrote down in the last revival match. Buzz-like blue eyes appeared on the virtual map, and Charlotte jumped down from a tall building, looking for the location of the contestant according to the coordinates. Well, he is sure now. Whoosh amid the howling wind, Charlotte glided towards the direction of the electric man, and then flew into the alley. Beside the trash can, old Steve was looking for a piece of cloth to wrap the shield. Hey, old man, is your old age so miserable? I still have $3 in pocket money. I can treat you to a meal at Madonna. Little spider? Old Steve turned around when he heard the voice, and his face was full of surprise when he saw Charlotte. Great, I can play with you again. Playing the resurrection match. I know what you are going to say next. Oh, I understand. This is your superpower. Old Steve stepped forward quickly, but I want to know why I want to eat Madonna. Don't you like hamburgers? No, I only eat McDonald's for hamburgers. Old Steve looked expectantly. Tell me what to do next. I'm looking forward to fighting side by side with you in the next 24 hours. Okay, I also look forward to seeing your exaggerated muscles. As he said, Charlotte fired spider silk with both hands to make a spider silk slingshot. Go up and take you flying. Old Steve's eyes lit up. I have wanted to do this for a long time. He followed Charlotte to pull the spider web, catapult and take off. At the same time, Norman stood on the rooftop in the night to observe the city. Damn Charlotte, I didn't expect you to win last time. Don't let me meet you this time, otherwise I will definitely twist your head off. His face was fierce, and then he peeled off the outer coating of the lollipop and put it in his mouth to chew hard, as if this could help him vent his anger. At this time, a sad little girl stood on the street and cried loudly. Then, two black shadows passed over the roof in an instant. Damn it, who stole my lollipop? Norman cursed. It was me. No, it was us. It will be on sale at 12 noon tomorrow. Please be the first to order. I haven't written the words for the sale yet. I'm thinking about how to add more. I added the group number in the introduction and set a fan value. If you are interested, you can join the group. Backquote. Chapter 88. Remarks on the release. Please order first. I promised to release all my manuscripts on Sanjiang before. I'm sorry that I have only produced 8 chapters. I feel ashamed. I will release all the chapters after the VIP version is opened at 12 noon. I hope you guys don't think it is too little. I have tried my best. I originally wanted to produce 10 to 20 chapters, but the difficulty is much greater than I thought. I'm a little confused to produce 8 chapters in a short time. If I produce more, I will not be able to guarantee the quality. The next step is to add more chapters. So far, this book has received 40,000 subscriptions. If the first subscription is 2,000, more chapters can be added. The subscription ratio is 20 to 1, and the estimated value is not high. Within 24 hours, for every additional 100 first subscriptions, 1 chapter will be added. The 4,000 words that must be updated every day are not counted as extra chapters. After 24 hours, for every additional 100 average subscriptions, 1 chapter will be added. The 4,000 words that must be updated every day are not counted as extra chapters. Rewards are not counted. I haven't thought about it yet. Brothers can give some suggestions. There will definitely be cases where I owe more chapters, but I can pay them back in installments. Brothers can join the group to supervise. Click on the bottom of the introduction to join the group. I will skip the part of selling misery. The only thing left is to ask for the first subscription. Ask for the first subscription. Please order first. I beg you to order first. I kowtow. The ground cracks. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89. If Captain becomes Spider-Man. Charlotte landed on the ground and stuffed half of the lollipop in her hand into the mouth of Old Steve. Old Steve, the Green Devil has bad breath. Norman, who saw the two clearly, was furious at first, and then forced out an ugly smile while retreating. It's terrible. I was caught by you again this time. Can we have a fair duel? He remembered the scene of being beaten by the two in the last resurrection match. What do you think? Charlotte smiled and approached the other party. I want to throw some dust in your eyes. No. You can't do this to me. I'm your most beloved Uncle Norman. 10 seconds later, with the help of Charlotte, Old Steve raised his shield and ended Norman. Who's next? He asked. Handsome old lizard. Peter? No, he's Professor Kurt. Okay, I have a hunch that I can win again this time. 10 minutes later, Charlotte finally found Professor Kurt hiding in the sewer according to the coordinates. Boom. With a loud noise from the sewer, Charlotte and Old Steve drilled out of the ground one after another. They finished off the second contestant. Who's next? Asked Old Steve. Charlotte thought for a moment. Go to Hamlet Street and kill Loki. The Hydra captain was with Bucky, and it would take some time to finish them off. Venom Parker was very strong, and he might not be his opponent now. In comparison, Loki, the weakling, was much weaker. Although this weakling could hold on to a set of combos in the hands of the Hulk. On the next street, the battle between Electro and Tony was also coming to an end. Sir, the armor's energy is at 300%. Very good. Turn on full power energy output. Okay, sir. Boom soon, with one increasing and the other decreasing. Electro, whose power was at the bottom, fled in embarrassment. Oh, Mr. Stark won. He beat the bad guys away. You are worthy of being Iron Man. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Please vote for me. Thank you. Tony, who won, waved his hand, and the drones in the sky once again sprinkled a sky full of banknotes, attracting everyone to scramble for them. Stark, stop canvassing for votes. Another weird guy has appeared. Young Steve picked up the shield and urged. Tony looked down and saw that his armor was seriously damaged, but Steve's clothes were not even torn, and he immediately said in a gloomy tone, Old Popsicle, you should go home and take a shower and go to bed. I don't need soldiers to cheer me up. Stark, you're going too far. Young Steve looked unkind. I'm telling the truth. Okay, then I'll tell the truth too. What are you without that armor? Soldier boy, it seems that you are very dissatisfied with me. Of course, no one will be kind to an arms dealer. Very good, I'll go change into a new set of armor and find a place to chat tonight. Don't call anyone. The one who called people is a puppy. Ha, you are worthy of being an old man from the last century. At the same time, Hamlet Street Theater. Ah, run. The citizens screamed and fled, and the deer-horned monster holding the scepter swung his hand to release energy to bombard the scene. Boom. No, stop. As the afterimage flashed, clones intercepted the energy and the clones disintegrated. Loki, stop, don't go any further. Loki in a tuxedo used his clones to surround Deerhorn Loki and advised nervously. Looking around at the clones around him, Deerhorn Loki smiled slightly. TSK TSK TSK, Earth's Avenger, don't think you can stop me by imitating my appearance. He smiled evilly, turned around and waved his scepter, and a physical clone disintegrated in an instant. What? Deerhorn Loki's face changed. He guessed wrong. Puff. The next moment, Loki in a tuxedo rushed forward and stabbed Deerhorn Loki in the abdomen with a dagger in his hand. Sorry, I can't let you continue to kill people. You will make Thor and my father very embarrassed. Loki in a tuxedo said with a trembling voice. However, the stabbed Deerhorn Loki still kept smiling. Really? That's great. After saying that, the clones disintegrated and the scepter fell to the ground. Finding that he had only killed one clone, Tuxedo Loki was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and laughed. As expected of the god of mischief, he is really cunning. He picked up the scepter on the ground with a nostalgic look in his eyes. This was left by him on purpose, with the purpose of using the Mind Stone on the scepter to cause internal conflicts in the Avengers. No one knows better than him how cunning Loki is. Thinking of this, he walked towards Barton, who had fainted, and lightly touched the other's body with the end of the scepter, instantly removing the hypnotic effect. Barton, who woke up, looked confused. Before he could remember anything, two figures had already flown and jumped into the chaotic street. Little spider, your spider silk shooter is amazing. Can you give me to next? Of course. Looking at the two people who appeared in front of him, Tuxedo Loki frowned. You are. His eyes fell on the elderly Steve, and he seemed to see the shadow of that person. There was an inexplicable sense of familiarity. The shield in the other person's hand made him understand who the old man in front of him was. Superhero, Captain America. As for the red and blue Spider-Man, he had never seen it before. But if he could walk with a superhero, then he must be a superhero. While he was looking at the two, Charlotte was also looking at the other person. He doesn't seem to be the Loki of this world, he said to the old Steve. The old Steve touched his chin. Yes, I observed his eyes, and it was very different from the past. So he is a contestant Loki. It must be. Do you want to kill him? I think so. The two chatted without avoiding each other. Hearing that the two were going to kill him without a word, Tuxedo Loki quickly retreated. Wait, I don't want to fight with you. First find the Loki of this world and stop the mistake he is about to make. What? Hearing this with their own ears, Charlotte and the old Steve looked at each other. Did I hear it wrong? Yes, I heard it right. He wants to stop Loki. Be careful, Loki is very cunning. The two said, attacking each other from the front and the back. What are you doing? Tuxedo Loki held his forehead helplessly. What I said is true. You are the Avengers. You don't want the Chitauri army to invade the Earth. Even if we kill you, we can stop it. Old Steve was halfway through his words when Tuxedo Loki's figure suddenly turned into green light and disappeared. He ran away. He looked regretful. But we got this. Charlotte picked up the scepter that fell to the ground and tapped the Mind Stone in it. You have experience. How to use this thing? He asked old Steve. Old Steve carefully recalled what happened that year. I can't remember clearly. I used it to knock out my old self. I remember being attacked by another me. Then I was very depressed when I went to the barbecue restaurant. But I didn't mean to do that. After all, I was in a hurry, but I couldn't break free from my old self. So I. Stop. Give me back the spider silk launcher. Why? Because you will be scarier than me when you become Spider-Man. Thanks to book friend 2024041511178511805 for the 100 points reward. Thanks to the secret garden that can't enter for the 500 points reward. Thanks to the 100 points reward for the 45-degree corner of the mouth. Thanks to the 100 points reward for the book silently. Thanks to Menuxalnai for the 200 points reward. Thanks to the 100 points reward for my dream. Thanks to the 2000 points reward for the mischievous Wheel of Fortune. Happy. Chapter 90. Stopping the fight and then being defeated by dark magic. So how did you use the scepter back then? Charlotte asked. Actually, there's no trick. Old Steve took the scepter. He tried the feel, then turned around and tapped Barton's chest with the end of the scepter. Barton. I just woke up. Seeing Barton fainting on the ground with his eyes rolled up, old Steve grinned. It worked. Charlotte held her forehead. I want to know how to use the scepter to hypnotize others. Then there's no other way. Old Steve spread his hands. I only know this. Okay, you go to Stark Tower and wait for Loki to show up. I'll go and mediate. As he said that, Charlotte took off the mind gem on the scepter, wrapped it with nanotechnology, and brought it with him. Mediate. Old Steve was puzzled. Yes, to stop the fight. If nothing unexpected happens, Tony and you in this world should duel. What? Old Steve looked unconvinced. Impossible. I have always had a good relationship with him, and we won't fight. Charlotte rolled her eyes. You once beat Tony up. Who said that? This is slander. Slander. You said it. Not long after, in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of New York. Is there a traffic jam? Old Popsicle? Tony on the roof laughed. Young Steve tightly grasped the shield in his hand, intending to vent all his dissatisfaction. Stark, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Tony looked indifferent, but the next moment he looked behind Steve. He saw a black shadow flying through the jungle at a high speed, and it was already approaching in just a few seconds. He frowned and said, "We agreed not to call anyone." Young Steve was stunned. "I didn't call anyone." Before he could turn around, the voice behind him said, "On your left." As the red and blue figure escaped from the shadows, Tony was instantly surprised. "Oh, it's you, Spider-Man." He smiled. Young Steve looked back at Charlotte, then said to Tony, "You called someone, puppy?" "No," he followed by himself. Tony came to Charlotte. "Nice to meet you. Since we parted last time, I found out that you might be from multiverse, parallel time and space." Charlotte spoke first, then scanned the darkness around him and said, "You fight first. Don't worry about me." "Tony, aren't you here to help me?" "Actually, I'm here to stop the fight. But it doesn't look like it. I'm going to stop it later." As he said that, Charlotte fired spider silk and flew down to the roof. "What are you waiting for? It can start," he urged. Young Steve's face darkened. "You called a referee. Thank you for your reminder. The referee is one of us." After Tony finished speaking, he raised his hand and continued to output a palm cannon. Bang! In an instant, young Steve quickly raised his shield to resist the sneak attack of pulse energy. "It hasn't started yet," he shouted. "It has already started." Tony's mouth slightly raised, and the Mark armor rose into the air, and palm cannons swept the ground one after another. Boom. In the gunfire, young Steve turned over to avoid it, and from time to time used his shield to reflect the incoming pulse energy, gradually leading Tony to the abandoned warehouse. Using the terrain advantage to prevent Tony from taking off, he had the opportunity to teach him a lesson. Charlotte just looked at the fight between the two calmly, without any intention of intervening. He wanted to know who would appear next. Apart from Venom Parker, no one should be able to kill Tony and Steve in a one-on-two situation. Of course, it is also possible that a sneak attack was successful when they were both injured. But as a circle of dark red fire appeared in front of him, Charlotte knew that he had guessed wrong. The gloomy breath swept over, and the spider sense warned frantically, and Charlotte flew back into the battlefield. "Stop first." Under the attack of the two, Charlotte raised his hand to block the impact of the arc pulse energy while holding the shield that broke through the air with the other hand. The sound of the wind passed by, and Charlotte succeeded in persuading the fight. "What?" Seeing this scene, the two were shocked. How is it possible? Young Steve wondered if he didn't use enough strength. After Tony realized what was going on, he smiled and said, "Nothing is impossible." He was even more exaggerated 2 years ago. Yes, he was black. Charlotte threw the shield to Steve, and then turned to look at the roof. A dark figure in a wizard's robe slowly emerged from the dark red spark portal on the roof. "That's..." Charlotte frowned. Tony also sensed this terrible aura, his face solemn. "Who is he?" "The Supreme Sorcerer, Stephen Strange. Mage." Young Steve was stunned. "Now there are mages. I'm really outdated." "It doesn't matter. It's my first time seeing a mage." Tony comforted. Charlotte glanced at the two guys, who didn't know the seriousness of the matter. As Strange slowly floated down, the cold aura became more and more creepy, making people extremely uncomfortable. "He gives me the feeling of an evil wizard." Tony frowned, secretly urging Jarvis to detect the cold energy around him. Charlotte took a deep breath. "You guessed it right. He is the Dark Wizard. I didn't expect it to be black, i.e. the situation is very bad." "What?" Steve was shocked when he heard it. Seeing this, Tony couldn't help asking, "Do you know what a Dark Wizard is?" Steve shook his head. "I don't know, but he doesn't sound like a good person." "Are you done talking?" The next moment, Dark Steven interrupted the three people's chatter. At this time, he looked at the three people with a playful smile on his face. The shadow between his eyebrows seemed to have a foreign object crawling. His face was haggard, but more evil. "I didn't expect there were 3 of them." "Very good." After speaking, Dark Steven's face showed a trace of cruelty. He made seals with his hands, and the dark magic circle suddenly rose from under the feet of the 3 people. "What?" Before Tony and Steve could react, Charlotte's figure rushed out of it. You can't run away. Dark Steven sneered, and he saw him lightly bend his fingers, and the magic circle suddenly burst out with hideous dark ghost hands. They quickly climbed up Tony and Steve's bodies, turning into long snakes and quickly spreading throughout the warehouse. Ha 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 woo 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 instantly. The whole warehouse was resounding with the whispers of the devil, accompanied by the shrill wails one after another, and the dark ghost hand had already occupied most of the warehouse. Seeing the ghost hand spreading rapidly, Charlotte felt a chill on his back, and his scalp went numb. It was the first time he fought a mage, so there was no need to make such a big deal, right? Trembling with fear, he pulled the spider silk in his hand. Puff puff puff. In an instant, the horrible ghost hand was cut into pieces in the spider silk trap, but before Charlotte could breathe a sigh of relief, dark energy enveloped him, the mage's light flashed, and the severed ghost hand squirmed and condensed again. This damn intensive phobia. Charlotte punched through the wall with an elbow and rushed out, but the outside world was shrouded in a deeper dark fog. Little bug, you can't run away. Chapter 91. The reindeer god longs to be conquered. Dark Steven's fingertips changed, the dark mist quickly dissipated, and the dimensional barrier composed of countless diamond-shaped mirrors came into view. Seeing this, the blue light in Charlotte's eyes dimmed slightly. The physical department is at a disadvantage against the magic department. In the magic circle, Steve had already been dragged into the abyss by the ghost hand. Tony's armor became tattered, and the black liquid spread rapidly, but it could not stop the ghost hand from tearing the armor. Seeing that he was about to be dragged into the magic circle, he shouted at the top of his voice, "Charlotte Parker, I heard from that old guy that you have terrible superpowers. Now is the time to use them." At the same time, the armor on his shoulder bounced up, and all the stored macro missiles were fired. Boom. In an instant, Dark Steven was drowned by artillery fire, and Charlotte also turned on the venom mode in an instant. Boom. 70 tons of power burst out, and 4 black spider spears stabbed one after another, vowing to crush Dark Steven completely. Crack, crack, crack. But as the ground under his feet changed dramatically, Charlotte found himself in an irregular environment similar to a geometric figure. The accumulated power was instantly wasted. The earth, trees, rocks, and night sky, these elements kept changing, flashing before Charlotte's eyes like a kaleidoscope. The next moment, the ground under his feet was replaced by the stars in the night sky, and Charlotte's figure fell rapidly in free fall. Bang! With a muffled sound, Charlotte felt a sharp pain all over his body, as if he had fallen from a height of thousands of meters to the ground, but the process happened in an instant, leaving him no time to react. In his eyes, in the warehouse floating in the sky, Tony in the magic circle was completely swallowed by the ghost hand. Little bug, now you are the only one left. Dark Steven stepped on the dimensional mirror and waved his hand slightly. Dark tentacles emerged from the void and locked Charlotte's limbs. The floating ground in the sky quickly condensed into a suspended island. Crack, crack, crack. Seeing the island falling from the sky and rumbling down, Charlotte's mouth twitched. I thought bombing bugs with missiles was outrageous enough, but now someone has moved an island. He admitted that he was proud. Boom. As the floating island came down, the bound Charlotte was completely submerged. In the rubble, the light of the mind gem became dimmer and dimmer. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. You will be rewarded with the original spider silk mode +1. 17 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The third resurrection match. In the night, Charlotte fired spider silk as usual and experienced the new spider silk mode. Swish. The spider silk with colorful light fell on the iron frame, which was very conspicuous in the dark night. Apart from that, it was no different from ordinary spider silk. Good guy, he obviously didn't eat Norman's rainbow candy. Shaking his head, Charlotte leaned against the antenna tower, recalling the scene of being crushed by the island just now, and couldn't help saying, Dark Steven's dark magic is temporarily unsolvable. Even with the warning of spider sense, Charlotte has no time to react and avoid danger. This guy is the bug of this resurrection match. But Dark Steven was so powerful, why didn't he go directly to S.H.I.E.L.D. and wipe out the Avengers, but took advantage of Tony and Steve leaving S.H.I.E.L.D. to start? Nick Fury must have something he didn't tell him. Charlotte gestured in the direction of the space carrier, and then jumped off the tall building. Dark Steven's line had to be avoided, and the Mind Stone had to be obtained first. Not long after, Hamlet Street Theatre. Mortals of the earth, kneel down. In the chaos, the scepter in the hand of Deerhorn Loki shook, and the pressure of God swept over. The citizens present knelt on the ground in fear, not daring to look up at this terrible guy. Seeing this, Deerhorn Loki smiled triumphantly. He lost the opportunity to become the king of Asgard, but he could rule the earth and become another king. The supreme power that was about to be in his hands made him excited. He began to wantonly belittle these earthlings, his tone full of disdain. Admit it, you are born to desire to be conquered. Swoosh, the red and blue figures flew past, and the figure of Deerhorn Loki collapsed, and the scepter in his hand disappeared. Everyone. What did he say? He claims to be a god and desires to be conquered. What a strange habit. I guess he is the god of reindeer, so he likes to be conquered. Yes, it looks like it. Let's go. That guy may come back again. The terrifying guy disappeared, and everyone stood up and whispered to each other, and then quickly dispersed. On the rooftop nearby, Charlotte played with the scepter in his hand. Next to him was Barton, who had just woken up. Who are you? Barton, who was confused, just opened his mouth, but saw Charlotte tapping Barton's chest with the tip of the scepter. But in an instant, Barton twitched and fell to the ground. I can do it too. Charlotte grinned. Soon, Tuxedo Loki rushed to the scene and saw that there was no one nearby, and the other self did not appear here, which made him confused. Where did Loki in this world go? Hi, I found you. Tuxedo Loki turned around and saw a young man in a red and blue coat holding a scepter, greeting him. Can you teach me how to use this thing? Charlotte pointed to the scepter in her hand. Tuxedo Loki frowned. You stole the scepter of Loki in this world, and you are also a contestant. Yes, I'm Charlotte Parker. Charlotte introduced herself. Loki took a step back slightly, his eyes alert. Charlotte Parker, he is indeed a contestant. I have no reason to teach you how to use the Mind Stone. He refused without hesitation. Really? Charlotte played with the scepter in his hand, wiped the gem on it casually, and a beam of energy shot out from the end of the scepter in an instant. Boom. In an instant, the shops on the roadside exploded. Charlotte was a little surprised. What did he just do? Tuxedo Loki's face changed. Are you threatening me? He gritted his teeth. Charlotte scratched his head. Threat? Tuxedo Loki took a deep breath. I can teach you how to use the Mind Stone, but the premise is that you can't hurt the people here. Charlotte. What did he hear? He became a villain? He began to re-examine the other party. As far as I know, you used to hate Earthlings the most, especially Earth's superheroes. Tuxedo Loki turned and walked to the corner. Yes, I was too willful at that time, so I did a lot of wrong things, which led to Thor and my father. He didn't continue. That was the thing he regretted the most. If he could do it again, he would never be so willful. Unfortunately, there is no if. He can only try his best to prevent Loki in this world from making mistakes, and at the same time, protect the Earthlings that Thor loves. In this way, perhaps Thor in this world will be easier. He owes too many people. He also knows that this can't make up for the people he has hurt. But at least in this world, they don't have to endure the suffering that follows because of Loki. Thinking of this, a trace of murderous intent flashed in his eyes. If you can't stop it, then kill Loki in this world. All problems are solved. As for the guy behind him, he was able to snatch the scepter from Loki, so he must be very difficult to deal with. He was thinking about how to deal with it next. However, Charlotte walked side by side with Tuxedo Loki at a fast pace. Where are you taking me? Let's find a place where we can't be easily discovered by other contestants. I don't think it's necessary. Anyway, you are just a clone. After Charlotte finished speaking, Tuxedo Loki's face changed. How did this guy know? Chapter 92. The God of Tricksters was tricked. So, Mr. Reindeer, you're not going to tell me now? Charlotte aimed the scepter at the nearby tall building. I'm very evil. You guy. Tuxedo Loki closed his eyes and took a deep breath, obviously very angry. It turns out that being a hero is so frustrating. How did Thor persist? Okay, I'll tell you how to use the scepter. Loki seemed to compromise. He said, "You need to learn about mind magic first, and then you can release the power of the mind gem, such as hypnosis magic." Charlotte frowned. "Magic again? I hate magic. So you need to learn space magic in advance to use the space gem." He looked strange. Tuxedo Loki nodded. "Yes. Do you know space magic?" "I don't." As soon as the voice fell, Charlotte reached out and touched the gem on the scepter, and energy overflowed. "Wait, I can." Tuxedo Loki said hurriedly. Charlotte smiled. "Very good. It feels really good to be a villain." The next second, Loki explained, "In fact, I just learned it, but I didn't master it. To be precise, the success rate is 0. But the space stone can infinitely increase the success rate of space magic." Hearing this, Charlotte was thoughtful. "If you don't know the corresponding magic, then you can't use the infinity stones, right?" he asked. Loki shook his head. "Not necessarily. Special props can help the user release the power of the infinity stones." "Infinity gauntlet?" Charlotte raised his eyebrows. Do you mean the one in the Asgard treasury?" "No, it's the one in Thanos' hand." Speaking of Thanos, a trace of fear flashed in Loki's eyes and Tuxedo, as if he had evoked terrible memories. Charlotte continued, "Thanos doesn't seem to know any magic, but he can use the power of any infinity stone without the infinity gauntlet. Is that so?" Tuxedo Loki, who had come to his senses, exhaled. "Not all infinity stones require magic to activate, and there is more than one way to use infinity stones. Special props are only used to carry the power of infinity stones. For special races in the universe, using infinity stones is not a difficult thing. But Earthlings can only release the most basic power of the Mind Stone through my scepter. If you want to further control the Mind Stone, the easiest way is to learn mind-related magic." "Okay, then you teach me hypnosis magic," Charlotte said. Tuxedo Loki was stunned. "Now? Of course. Okay, you recite the spell with me first." "Wait, I don't want to learn it again." Seeing that the other party was so straightforward, Charlotte gave up this plan without hesitation. Spider-Man would not be fooled easily. Loki was much more cunning than the captain of Hydra, and of course he could not believe him. "Do you know where Loki in this world has gone?" Charlotte asked. "You want to?" Tuxedo Loki's heart moved. "Yes, you don't want Loki in this world to lead the Chitauri army to Earth, right?" Charlotte felt that he was becoming more and more like a professional villain, and his Kids Day speech also made Loki very excited. In Loki's view, it would be a waste if he didn't want the thugs who came to his door. He was confident that he could fool the other party to do things for him. Immediately, a smile appeared on the face of Loki in a tuxedo. "I'm willing to help you with this." As he said, he slowly closed his eyes, as if sensing something. Charlotte on the side was full of curiosity. "Can you sense Loki in this world?" "No, I'm listening." "What are you listening to?" "Thunder." "There." The next moment, Loki opened his eyes. He looked at the flash of lightning in the sky and smiled slightly. Heimdall will teleport Thor to the vicinity of Loki. Where Thor is, Loki is there. Looking back, he saw Charlotte clicking on the nano device, and Loki was a little confused. "What are you doing?" "Recording the time and place of Thor's appearance. I will tell you directly next time, when it is convenient." Loki. Weird guy. Soon, with a red and blue nanometal covering her body, Charlotte launched spider silk and flew over the tall building. "Wait, you haven't taken me with you yet." Tuxedo Loki chased and shouted. Not long after, in the woods outside the city, Charlotte flew and landed on the treetops and found that the space in front seemed to be distorted. "It's magic. Someone used magic to change the nearby environment." Loki frowned beside him. "This power is dark magic." He thought of the dark elves who invaded Asgard, and his expression dimmed. It was that time that his mother died at the hands of the dark elves, which was what he regretted the most. Charlotte did not notice Loki's emotional changes, and he flew to the side carefully. "Take a detour." Because the abandoned warehouse, where Tony and Steve had an appointment to fight, was in front. If nothing unexpected happened, these two guys should have been killed by Dark Steven. Hula the treetops swayed slightly, and Charlotte and Tuxedo Loki flew over with the help of spider silk. After a short practice, Loki also learned to use the spider silk launcher skillfully. Soon, the cliff on the coast. In the nearby woods, the two landed on the treetops to observe the surrounding environment. There is residual magic energy. Loki has appeared here, Tuxedo Loki said. Charlotte frowned. Where is he now? Tuxedo Loki shook his head. I don't know. He has the space gem, so it's hard to track his whereabouts. The strangest thing is that Thor has also disappeared. Maybe we are too late. No, it doesn't seem too late. Suddenly, a blue wormhole appeared on the cliff, and a familiar figure emerged from it. It's Loki from this world, Tuxedo Loki said, and several clones emerged in the green magic light. They approached each other carefully and quietly surrounded the antler Loki. Charlotte was curious when she saw this. Can the clone use magic? Can you handle him? He asked. Tuxedo Loki nodded. No problem. The space gem is the most critical prop. It is impossible for only one clone to protect it. Charlotte nodded. That makes sense. Caught him. The next second, under the ambush of several clones, the antler Loki was easily captured. The two men stepped forward quickly, and Tuxedo Loki quickly snatched the cosmic cube from the other's hand. I got it. Tuxedo Loki smiled. Congratulations. The captured antler Loki laughed instead of getting angry, and Charlotte immediately had a bad feeling. But in an instant, the cosmic cube burst into strong light, and the next second it teleported the three people to a desolate planet. Ha ha ha, welcome to my world. Under the cover of the bright starry sky, Antler Loki laughed, and the surrounding hills quickly emerged with endless Chitauri soldiers. What? Tuxedo Loki looked down, only to see that the cosmic cube in his hand had disappeared, and his face looked ugly. As the god of trickster, I was pranked. Chapter 93 The Great Thanos plans to retire. Charlotte on the side scratched his head. What happened? Tuxedo Loki shook his head. I didn't expect his magic power to be stronger than mine, so I couldn't find out that the cosmic cube was fake. We were teleported to the Chitauri base camp by him, he said. Charlotte glanced at the Chitauri soldiers rushing around, helplessly holding his forehead. Well, this game is broken again. But if we can grab the cosmic cube, maybe we can. Before he could think about it, a huge figure walked out of the Chitauri soldiers. Black Dwarf, who was wearing heavy armor and holding a giant axe, scolded. Loki, what are you doing back again? Hurry back to Earth to execute Lord Thanos' orders. Seeing Black Dwarf appear, Deerhorn Loki's face was gloomy. But he needs to use the other party now. Of course he can't turn against him. Friend, I'm being hunted by the superheroes on Earth, and they are also annoying guys who hinder Lord Thanos' plan. He forced a smile. Black Dwarf looked at Antler Loki with disdain. What a troublesome guy. We have helped you deal with your brother. Isn't that enough? This is the last time. Antler Loki promised. Humph, it's better this way. Black Dwarf looked at the two people. His eyes fell on Tuxedo Loki. You are not lying. You are not your biological brother. He pointed at Tuxedo Loki. This is your twin brother, or maybe your younger brother. Antler Loki. Listening to the conversation between the two, Tuxedo Loki frowned. Thor was indeed teleported here by him, and he plans to use the same method to deal with us. Charlotte looked at Black Dwarf, who was as big as the Hulk. If there is only this guy, it is not impossible to fight. Halfway through the words, the Chitauri army made way, and the Black Obsidian warriors led by Ebony Maw appeared in Charlotte's sight one after another. Charlotte. This game completely collapsed. But the next second there was a reversal. Black Dwarf, Lord Thanos has ordered that you cannot treat Spider-Man rudely, Ebony Maw said, and he waved his hand gracefully, and the Chitauri soldiers around him retreated like a tide. After this, both Loki and Black Dwarf were stunned. Wait, Spider-Man refers to that guy? Deerhorn Loki came back to his senses, and looked at Charlotte with confusion in his eyes. Ebony Maw glanced at Deerhorn Loki calmly. Of course, if you can also have a set of spider pajamas, I can also treat you as Spider-Man. Really? Deerhorn Loki blinked, and the green light swept across his body, and the identical spider suit was already dressed. Ebony Maw. Do you think this is humorous? He narrowed his eyes slightly, and the surrounding gravel moved without wind, and a creepy cold breath swept over, making Deerhorn Loki shudder. I admit that I'm not humorous enough. Deerhorn Loki withdrew the magic tactfully. Tuxedo Loki approached Charlotte and whispered, so your name is Spider-Man? Didn't I introduce myself? Charlotte was puzzled. Of course not. You just said your name is Charlotte. Black Dwarf stroked his chin and looked at the two of them, his face full of confusion. Which of these two guys is a spider? He had no idea about earth creatures. Idiot. Seeing this, Ebony Maw cursed inwardly and then slowly walked towards Charlotte. Respected Mr. Spider-Man, you shouldn't resist, right? He smiled and bowed elegantly, but his tone was full of threats. Charlotte nodded, slowly raised his hand and said, of course, I surrender. If he continued to fight, he would definitely lose. But surrendering is only half the battle. So he didn't count as surrendering. Tuxedo Loki followed suit and raised his hand. I surrender too. Can you lock me up with Thor? Of course. Ebony Maw waved his hand, and Tuxedo Loki was taken away by the soldiers. Charlotte followed Ebony Maw and others onto the aircraft. At the other end of the desolate planet, a huge space battleship slowly docked between the mountains. The hatch opened, and Ebony Maw led Charlotte through the interior of the battleship. Soon, in the command room of the battleship, Charlotte saw a familiar purple figure. On the purple gold throne floating in the air, Thanos rested his chin with one hand. When he saw Charlotte, the corner of his mouth curled up. Spider-Man, I haven't seen you for many years. Are you okay? He stood up and greeted Charlotte. Thanos. Looking at the middle-aged Thanos in front of him, Charlotte thought to himself that it was indeed the case. Except for the Thanos he knew, other Thanos would not care about a bug. I just arrived. How did you know I was here? Charlotte said, and then curiously jumped onto Thanos' purple gold throne. The chair is quite expensive, right? He stroked the metal throne made of unknown metal, his face full of envy. Spider-Man, you're crossing the line. Ebony Maw scolded fiercely, but was stopped by Thanos. Don't worry about him. What? Seeing that the great Lord Thanos was so tolerant at this moment, the people present widened their eyes, unable to believe that this was really happening. Then, something even more shocking happened. Thanos looked at Charlotte and said, if you like, I can give it to you. What? Ebony Maw and others were completely stunned. What did they hear? The great Thanos was going to abdicate? Great Lord Thanos, we need you to lead us to conquer the universe. Yes, you can't give up the position of overlord to a bug. We don't accept it. Yes, I want to duel with this guy. The crowd was indignant, and Thanos was also confused by their reaction. It's just a chair. I don't plan to retire, he said. Everyone. Well, they were excited. Charlotte looked at this scene quietly. Let's talk business. Okay. Thanos took out the sacred artifact of the Titans from his arms. It has reacted since you appeared again. It was your divine power that helped me open the land of exile. It remembered you. Charlotte sat cross-legged on the throne, looking directly at the scar on the other's face. It seems that many years have passed. Yes, I can't remember how many years have passed. Thanos sighed slowly, his face full of vicissitudes of life. He turned around and sat on the stairs next to the throne. The way you strange guys left was very special back then. I roughly guessed where you came from. He turned his head and looked at Charlotte. When I saw you again, I was more certain that you haven't changed at all. You are still so young. That's enough for reminiscing about the past. What are you going to do next? Charlotte asked knowingly. Thanos smiled. You should understand the purpose of my collecting infinite gems. He tapped the void lightly, and a virtual picture appeared in front of the two of them. The earth in the picture slowly rotated, and the next moment it was destroyed by an infinitely huge figure. Soon, the terrifying existence inside the earth will hatch successfully. Its appearance will completely destroy the planet. I'm doing this to help the people on earth. Maybe there are other ways. Charlotte said, collecting 6 infinity stones can make any wish come true. But the infinity stones cannot kill the gods. Chapter 94 Treatment of Surrender. Thanos continued, I know what you are thinking. If it were you, you might use the power of the infinity stones to help them migrate to the stars. But I tell you, you only have one life. You can't use the power of 6 infinity stones in a row. Their power will tear your body apart mercilessly, and you can't save them a second time. There is more than one god seed in the universe. Planets with life may become hatcheries. Interstellar migration is just repeating the same tragedy. This is an unavoidable disaster. Over the years, I have gradually understood all this. The only way to stop them is to use the power of the infinity stones. to destroy half of the population of the universe, and there is only one chance. Thanos stood up and looked directly at Charlotte. So Spider-Man, I don't know what your purpose is this time, but please don't stop me. We don't have time. You think too much. I don't have the ability to stop you now. Charlotte jumped off the throne and patted Thanos' chest muscles. Well, you are much stronger than before. I can't beat you. Thanos still stared at Charlotte's eyes. But you have a way to stop me. I know. I really don't. Charlotte spread his hands. You do. I remember the events of that year very clearly. You must know some secrets that no one else knows. No. You do. Okay, I do. Charlotte was powerless to explain. Thanos' face became serious after he finished speaking. You admitted it, so you can only stay here until I succeed. He added, this is not imprisonment. I thank you for your help back then. You can move around freely, but you cannot leave here. Thank you. Charlotte rolled her eyes. As he said that, he was about to turn around and leave. Wait, leave the Mind Stone behind. It's mine. Thanos said. Charlotte. He was discovered, embarrassed. Half an hour later, he came to the place where Thor was imprisoned. Charlotte Parker, you seem to be treated very well as a prisoner. Seeing Charlotte freely entering and leaving the prison surrounded by Chitauri soldiers, Tuxedo Loki was full of envy. If he had been treated this way back then. Thinking of something, he became silent again. Loki, you are really sick. On the side, Thor in this world looked helplessly at his brother in front of him. Although his brother had admitted his mistake to him, he also readily forgave him. But when the two chatted, this guy would always pause for a long time on a certain sentence, and his mood was particularly low. He believed that his brother was sick. A very serious illness. Seeing this, Charlotte couldn't help but curl her lips. What are you doing? It's just a clone. There's no need to be like this, right? What? Charlotte's words stunned Thor. Then, he grabbed Loki's collar in anger. Loki, you lied to me again. When will you repent? Ahem. Be gentle. I can't breathe. I'm not a clone. Being treated like this, Tuxedo Loki quickly broke free from Thor's big hand. On the way to find Thor, I'm not a clone. He adjusted his collar and said, really? Charlotte was half believing and half doubting, and then raised the scepter without the Mind Stone. What are you going to do? Loki looked alert. Try to see if you are a clone. Wait, don't mess around. I'm really not a clone. I'll die if you do this. Hulk couldn't kill you. You won't die that easily. How do you know? Oh, it hurts. It hurts, brother. You hurt my brother. I want to do it for him. No, don't do this. Wait for me to find the hammer. I will fight you fairly. 3 minutes later, Charlotte put down the scepter. Well, it's not a clone, he said seriously. In the corner, Loki and Thor were lying on the ground and groaning from time to time. Brother, your friend is too cruel. Thor covered half of his butt and grinned. Tuxedo Loki was extremely depressed. I didn't expect you couldn't even beat a bug without a hammer. I'm just injured. I will definitely beat him when I recover, believe me. Thor said stubbornly. Loki glanced at the electric shock bracelet on Thor's hand and sighed sadly. Sure enough, the Thor in this world is also afraid of electricity. Then, the three of them spent the rest of the time in boredom. Until the elimination prompts appeared in front of Tuxedo Loki and Charlotte respectively. You have been eliminated and cannot get a resurrection spot. You will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1. 16 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The fourth resurrection match. Under the antenna tower, Charlotte raised her hand to shoot Spider Silk. Purple Spider Silk, still useless. Next, Hamlet Street Theater. After easily grabbing the Mind Scepter, Charlotte met Tuxedo Loki. I'm Charlotte Parker, a superhero from another world. Have you heard of the story of Spider-Man? Charlotte introduced herself. Tuxedo Loki frowned. No. He had never heard of Spider-Man before he was strangled to death by Thanos. Charlotte didn't care. Okay, it doesn't matter. Next, we can work together to get a resurrection spot. Why should I believe you? You can believe him. As another voice appeared, the old Steve slowly walked out of the dark corner, and the shield in his hand made Tuxedo Loki's heart move. Are you Steve? Yes, you and I are from the same world. Old Steve said according to what Charlotte had said in advance, after your death, the remaining half of the population of Asgard immigrated to Earth. But because of the advent of Thanos, the Avengers failed, and half of the population in the universe disappeared, including Asgard, which only had half of its population left. Listening to these narrations, Tuxedo Loki just turned his head, and did not have the emotional fluctuations that he imagined. I guessed it long ago. Thor is not his opponent. His father is gone. I saw Hulk defeated by him with my own eyes. No one can stop him anymore. Old Steve took the scepter from Charlotte and said to Loki, Thor has lost his last relative. Don't you want to go back and see him? Loki was silent for a while, then said, without his troublesome brother, Thor will live well. No, you may not know what happened later. Old Steve said a lot to Loki. Charlotte stood aside, quietly waiting for the result. In the last resurrection match, he already knew that this Loki was likely from the same world as the old man. If it was any other Loki, he would not be sure to convince the other party. But for the Loki in Thor 3, Charlotte decided to give it a try. Loki, who had died once, knew what he should do. Sure enough, the old Steve successfully convinced the other party. Tuxedo Loki held the Mind Scepter and regained his arrogance as he squinted at Charlotte. I heard that your superpowers are outrageous. I really want to see them. I hope you won't let me down. Hearing this, Charlotte had a bad feeling. Old man, what did you say to him? Old Steve looked up at the sky. Nothing, just a brief introduction of your superpowers. Very good. You can also talk about your intimate scenes with the lizard Parker. I was wrong. Chapter 95. Encirclement and Killing of Venom Parker. 5 minutes later. On the rooftop under the night sky, Tuxedo Loki looked at the green demon tied up with hemp ropes and spider silk, and groaned slightly. What's wrong? Charlotte asked. Tuxedo Loki said, it's my experience that you can't hypnotize him through the armor. He still remembered the embarrassing scene of failing to hypnotize Iron Man. Oh, I remember. Stark complained about you. Old Steve smiled, and then took off Norman's helmet with his own hands. What do you bastards want to do to me? Stop it. In Norman's wailing, Loki tapped his forehead with the Mind Scepter. Buzz the light rippled for a moment, and the pupils in Norman's eyes instantly glowed with blue light. Seeing Norman stagnant in place, Old Steve looked at Charlotte. Will it really work? Charlotte shrugged. Let's try it. There are many contestants this time. We need manpower. It's hard to deal with that guy with just a few of us. He had thought of using the Mind Stone to hypnotize other contestants to join his camp. It was only because of the encounter with Dark Steven and the cunning operation of Loki in this world that 2 restart opportunities were wasted. Thinking about it, Norman finally reacted. Kid, wasn't I dead? Norman, who looked confused, quickly recovered his previous memory. He stood up and looked at Loki and Steve, and then his eyes returned to Charlotte. You saved me, kid. With tears in his eyes, Norman stepped forward and gave Charlotte a hug. This made Charlotte speechless. Is this the effect of your hypnosis? Why is it different from when you hypnotized Barton? He said to Tuxedo Loki. Loki was also confused. Something's wrong. Normally, he shouldn't have any emotions after being hypnotized by me unless I use another kind of hypnosis magic. He was full of doubts. What hypnosis? Hearing this, Norman let go of Charlotte and rubbed his temples. I feel much more awake, and the guy in my body is completely quiet. He was full of joy. I can go back to see Harry. No, you can't go back now. Charlotte guessed that Loki only hypnotized Norman's second personality, so Norman could regain consciousness for a short time. Is there a way to completely make the second personality in his body disappear? He asked Loki again. Tuxedo Loki frowned. In essence, no matter which personality it is himself. We can only try to treat or seal it. It is impossible to completely erase a second personality. Forget it. Charlotte gave up this plan. Treatment takes time, and sealing has a lot of uncertainty, and it is very likely to be reset again after leaving the resurrection game, and the next time we meet, it will still be the evil Green Goblin. Unless a targeted treatment serum can be made to solve it once and for all. But it is still possible to be reset. Let's try it again when we have a chance in the future. Now Norman is just a thug. He didn't have time to explain too much, so he let Loki hypnotize Norman again. Soon, the four of them acted together and found Professor Kurt according to the location provided by Charlotte and hypnotized him in the same way. The 4-man team became a 5-man team. Little Spider, your superpowers are getting more and more exaggerated. Old Steve sighed. Tuxedo Loki was also somewhat convinced. I only have this kind of magic from my mother. Halfway through, he emo again. Charlotte did not explain. Contestants cannot stay in one place forever, so Charlotte has to remember not only the places they have appeared, but also the time of each appearance. Fortunately, all this information can match. Calculating the time, Tony and Electro should have finished fighting, and may be on the way to the fight. Electro will leave the city to find a power plant, but this guy is too fast to be caught, so there is no way to hypnotize him. Captain Hydra and Bucky are very clear about the intelligence system of S.H.I.E.L.D. If Charlotte does not show up, they will not appear in the surveillance view from beginning to end. Charlotte has no plan to show up to Lure for the time being, because he is about to miss the time when Venom Parker will appear for the last time. Get rid of Venom Parker first. This guy's threat is second only to Dark Steven. We are here. Soon, the 5-man team arrived at the amusement park. The amusement park was silent at night, but the breeze that blew from time to time was mixed with a strange smell. It's the smell of blood. Elderly Steve confirmed. I saw it. It's the Black Spider-Man. Tuxedo Loki pointed in the direction of the Ferris wheel, his face condensed. It's a cruel guy. On the top of the cabin at the highest point of the Ferris wheel, the Black Spider-Man was holding his head and gnawing wildly. The broken body was hanging upside down on the iron frame, and the blood flowed down the iron frame. The picture was extremely uncomfortable. Near the Ferris wheel, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents lurked in the corner, always paying attention to Venom Parker's every move. They did not act rashly, because before this, they had lost many colleagues, and knew how terrible this guy was. After discovering Charlotte and his group, they seemed to have expected it, and evacuated the amusement park one after another. Commander, they have appeared. Outside the amusement park, Agent Hill reported the situation at any time. In the S.H.I.E.L.D. command room, the large screen surveillance screen locked the target. Nick Fury's eyes locked on the 5-person team in the picture, and his single eye flashed a gleam of light. Keep an eye on them, but don't interfere with their fight. He gave the order. Coulson on the side said, the starting point of this incident was the red and blue Spider-Man. He found the strange guy lurking in the dark along the way, and then used the strange scepter to convince them. He must have his purpose for gathering so much power. Nick Fury nodded. Some guys didn't even find our intelligence system, but Spider-Man found them easily. Looking at the elderly captain and the other Loki in the team, he took a deep breath. Stark didn't lie to us. Parallel time and space really exist. He has been paying attention to this strange team. But the other Natasha didn't show up. Coulson said. It doesn't matter. Nick Fury watched the battle that was about to break out on the screen. What's important is whether their target is the cosmic cube or something else. As he said, he looked at Coulson. Are Tony and Steve still not back? Yes, they didn't follow the order. These two guys are too easy to lose control. Fortunately, Barton is back. At this time, the amusement park war broke out. Boom. Green tail flames streaked across the night sky. Pumpkin bombs bombed one after another. Black monsters roared and screamed in the flames, and a black sword several tens of meters long slashed towards the night sky. But without waiting for the sword to hit Norman, the elderly Steve who climbed up the iron frame activated the high-frequency sound wave device without hesitation. This was what he learned to make when he watched Natasha operate it last time. SHHH. Instantly, the sound wave spread, the sword melted, the black liquid was extremely distorted, and a terrifying roar resounded through the night sky, and then Venom Parker was seen frantically destroying everything around him. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Venom Girl, Abby, embarrassed. Boom crack, crack, crack. The Ferris wheel shook violently, and the cabin fragments fell from the sky. The old Steve on the iron frame carefully avoided them. At the same time, Loki's clones rushed into the cabin and headed straight for Venom Parker. "Get out." Boom. The black liquid condensed into fists, and the clones collapsed. The next moment, the big green lizard climbed onto the iron frame, and Charlotte on its back leaped. Yin. The venom mode was turned on, and 4 spider spears assisted Charlotte to shuttle through the Ferris wheel iron frame. When he waved the scepter in his hand, energy beams bombarded Venom Parker. Boom. Amid the explosion, the black liquid spread rapidly. Seeing that Venom Parker was about to land and escape, the old Steve once again activated all the nearby sound wave devices. Buzz. In an instant, the sound wave enveloped the area, and Venom Parker's body was full of liquid squirming wildly, and he fell off the iron frame head first. Power on the ground, a pool of black mud quickly formed, and the scepter fell from the sky and inserted into it, and Loki's clones rushed over one after another. "I got you." Surrounded by the clones, Tuxedo Loki grabbed the handle of the scepter and activated the hypnosis magic. Buzz. The light of the gem rippled, and the black liquid stopped wriggling. Success. Tuxedo Loki breathed a sigh of relief. Before this, he had heard the old captain describe the horror of this guy, and he was actually worried about this operation. But now it seems that this guy's weakness is too obvious. He was hypnotized before his strength was fully exerted, and the process went smoothly. "Be careful." Suddenly, only Charlotte shouted, and Venom Parker, who was thought to be hypnotized, jumped up again. "What?" Loki was shocked. "Gaga. Interesting ability." Splash. The black liquid surged like a tide, and Loki's figure was swallowed by it in an instant, followed by a large piece of black spider silk spreading around, violently strangling everything he could encounter. Looking at the people struggling in the black spider silk, Charlotte shook his head. This wave of mistakes directly sent the resurrection spot to Venom Parker. Restart. You have been eliminated and cannot get a resurrection spot. You will be rewarded with the original spider silk mode +1. 15 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 5th resurrection match. Check the spider silk as usual. Black spider silk. Useless. Next one. It's still the battle of the amusement park. But at the last moment, Tuxedo Loki cast 2 consecutive hypnotic magics. The light rippled, and the black liquid swallowed everything. Still failed. Charlotte frowned. Maybe he made a mistake. Then, the 6th resurrection match. Buzz. The scepter rippled with light, and after a brief silence, the black liquid quickly crawled and spread. Still failed. Just as Charlotte was about to restart, the black liquid twisted and turned into a huge heart. Wow, this world is so beautiful, the air is so fresh, and everyone is so friendly. Peter Parker stood up with a big heart on his head and pretended to be a cute girl, and the black liquid on his body turned into a pink girl. Venom girl Abby, Charlotte. He looked at Loki. "Is your magic serious?" Loki in a tuxedo was really disgusted. He turned around and retched. "Ugh, sorry, this is the first time I use this kind of hypnosis magic. I want him to think that he is a kind person, but now it seems that I have used too much force. With the help of the Mind Stone, he can perform this alternative hypnosis magic. I didn't expect that this situation would occur in the first use. It's more than just too much force, it's a magic miracle." Charlotte's mouth twitched slightly. The failure of the first hypnosis made him realize that the symbiote could not be hypnotized. The second time, he hypnotized the symbiote and Peter Parker indiscriminately, but it still failed. Loki's hypnosis magic made Peter Parker lose his self-awareness, and the symbiote naturally found it easier to control this body, and was not controlled by Loki. The third time, he asked Loki to use another kind of hypnotic magic. This kind of hypnotic magic cannot control the other party's actions, but it can make the hypnotized person enter a certain false personality state. He wants to turn Peter Parker into an absolutely kind and sunny and cheerful big boy without any dark side. This guy is just playing badly because of despair, and he is essentially a good person. Unexpectedly, after adding the good guy buff, the symbiote in Peter Parker's body crashed on the spot, and then completely became a kind puppet. Without the dark side, kindness is the only dark side. Seeing that Venom girl Peter Parker began to harass his team members, Charlotte quickly hid behind the elderly Steve. "If he comes over, you take over." "No, why? Old people first." Elderly Steve. Abby. The next moment, Peter Parker, who pretended to be cute, rushed to him and said enthusiastically, "Old man, I want to give you a back massage." The old man was terrified and retreated again and again. "No, don't touch me. Oh, my back." Listening to the wailing of the old Steve, Charlotte, who was hiding far away, patted his chest with lingering fear. "It's terrible, too terrible." On the side, Tuxedo Loki seemed to have discovered a new world. "So this is the strongest magic of Asgard. I will use it to become the #1 wizard in the 9 realms." He raised his scepter high, his face full of high spirits. Charlotte rolled his eyes. "Don't dream. Go to Stark Building first. Loki will definitely open the wormhole there." Tuxedo Loki came back to his senses. He looked at Charlotte and the old captain, and nodded calmly. "Okay, we'll go now." "Wait." Charlotte stopped him, and talked to himself in a casual tone. "We have 3 people, but if the wormhole is closed, and the Chitauri army does not appear, apart from the task of killing the Avengers, we can only complete the 2 tasks of killing Loki, and killing the contestants at most. What do you want to say?" Tuxedo Loki slightly clenched the scepter, secretly alert in his heart. Charlotte didn't care at all. He continued, "What I mean is that there are only 2 resurrection spots, not enough." But the moment he finished speaking, the scepter flashed, but Charlotte, who was well prepared, dodged the sneak attack and calmly watched the sharp blade at the tip of the scepter pass by. "It's time to reap the rewards, and you really plan to abandon me?" Loki gritted his teeth. Under his control, Norman and others with dull eyes surrounded Charlotte one after another. "What happened?" The old man who was entangled by Peter Parker exclaimed. "It's okay, you do your thing." Charlotte waved his hand. He looked at Loki hiding behind Norman calmly. "I didn't plan to abandon you. It's you who didn't trust us. Make it clear, as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary trouble later." He didn't want to waste a restart because of Loki's suspicious speculation. Sure enough, Loki's eyes flickered when he was mentioned. "I don't distrust you." "Of course you do. Okay, tell me how to get the 3rd resurrection spot, then I can completely trust you," Loki said. Charlotte didn't hide it either. He looked at the stars in the night sky and smiled mysteriously. "If the Chitauri army doesn't invade Earth, can't we invade them?" "What?" Loki was shocked by this crazy idea. Chapter 97 The Captain Really Becomes Spider-Man. 4,000 words. Please subscribe. Near Stark Tower, there is a 24-hour convenience store. Slurp steam rises on the roadside. Charlotte and old Steve each hold a bowl of instant noodles, sitting in front of the convenience store without caring about their image, sipping the noodles attentively. Behind him, Loki in a tuxedo also holds a bowl of instant noodles. Although the noodles smell fragrant, he still finds it hard to swallow. How can he eat this noodles without tables and chairs and a gorgeous palace? As passers-by cast strange glances, his face changes. "I'm the Prince of Asgard. How can you let me eat this low-level mortal food?" He looked at Charlotte, who had already started drinking soup, and the more he thought about it, the angrier he got. After hearing this, Charlotte put down the instant noodles and looked at Loki. "If you don't like it, I can treat you to Madonna." "What is that?" "Hamburger." "Okay." In Loki's impression, Thor also likes to eat this kind of thing. Hamburgers must be higher end than instant noodles. Old Steve on the side wiped his mouth after eating the instant noodles and threw the instant noodles bowl into the trash can. But he didn't throw it in. "Abby, old people can't throw garbage everywhere." Suddenly, a terrible voice appeared, and the face of old Steve changed. "I saw Venom Parker rushing down from the roof, then took small steps to throw the instant noodle bowl back into the trash can, and finally made a yes gesture." Witnessing this scene again, old Steve turned around and vomited everything he had just eaten. "I clearly asked Norman and Professor Kurt to take him away. Why is he here again?" he asked. Seeing this, Charlotte said with disdain, "Old man is just hypocritical. Learn from me. I have seen all kinds of ups and downs in so many years. This scene is nothing. Just sprinkle some water." Hearing this, Tuxedo Loki silently got up and walked away. The next second, the sound of vomiting came from behind. "Abby, it's wrong for you to vomit everywhere like this. You have to clean it up." Ugh, in the corner, Loki looked at the instant noodles in his hand and shook his head. "It's even more impossible to eat now." Seeing Venom Parker start to clean up the scene, Charlotte looked up at the roof. "They're gone." Tuxedo Loki waved his hand, and a scepter emerged in the green light. Buzz the light rippled, but Norman and Professor Kurt still did not appear. Loki frowned. Did they break free? If they break free, there will definitely be some noise. Is there another possibility? Charlotte asked. Yes, unless they are dead. Hearing this, Charlotte subconsciously glanced at the surroundings. The SHIELD agents have also disappeared. Nick Fury will not give up the opportunity to monitor us, I'm sure. Old Steve said after recovering. Charlotte nodded. So there is only one possibility. They are also dead. The Loki of this world can't kill these people without us noticing. Tuxedo Loki was sure. Charlotte stood up and observed everything around her. Loki has helpers. Maybe even he doesn't know. What? Old Steve and Tuxedo Loki looked confused, not understanding what this meant. The next moment, the spider sense warned Charlotte in her heart. Oops. The sudden appearance of magic fluctuations made Tuxedo Loki feel frightened. This breath is dark magic. After saying this, a dark magic circle suddenly bloomed under everyone's feet. But at the moment when the dark magic circle was completed, Charlotte and Old Steve instantly launched spider silk and flew away, leaving Tuxedo Loki alone screaming in shock. Wait for me. Abby, so scary. Venom Boy screamed and fled, and then was pulled into the dark magic circle by the spreading ghost hand. It can be seen that Venom Parker, who has been whitewashed, is extremely kind, and has no fighting power at all. At the same time, Charlotte flew to a nearby billboard, and watched the hideous ghost hand drown Tuxedo Loki. Old man, you are not right. He looked at the Old Steve beside him with a strange look in his eyes. He can avoid dark magic because of spider sense, but what's wrong with this guy? Old Steve stood still. Peter shuddered. I also have this thing, but the probability of it appearing is very low, not as reliable as yours. Charlotte suddenly realized. He remembered that this was one of the rewards Steve won the resurrection match. In addition, he lent the opponent the spider silk launcher. So, this guy really became Captain Spider-Man? The next second, the dark ghost hand burst out, and the two-shot spider silk to shuttle between the tall buildings. Little spider, what are these ghost things? Old Steve shouted, while being almost caught by the ghost hand several times. These ghost hands seemed to be able to extend infinitely, and soon turned into a dark cloud covering the urban area. Charlotte did not answer, because he had seen a large area of dimensional barrier similar to diamond mirrors gradually rising around them. They could not escape. Boom. The darkness surged, and the whole world began to change into geometric shapes. Dark tentacles shot out from the dimension, not giving the two a chance to breathe, and instantly hung them upside down in the air. Seeing Dark Steven emerge from the dark red spark portal, Old Steve exclaimed. Supreme Sorcerer Dr. Steven. No, it's the Dark Sorcerer. Charlotte said. How did you tell? He doesn't have a cape. Let me guess. Old Steve looked grim. Supreme Sorcerer Strange was a legendary wizard who could suppress Thanos. If Thanos didn't have the Infinity Stones, Dr. Steven could have defeated him alone. And Steven, who has learned the dark magic, will be even stronger. As Dark Steven made hand seals, the surrounding geometric buildings quickly crushed over. Wait, as a villain, you should say a few words before you can use your ultimate move. Charlotte reminded. As soon as these words came out, Dark Steven paused. There's nothing to say, because this is not a big move. After saying this, the geometric buildings completely submerged the two. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a place to revive. You will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1. 13 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 7th resurrection match. The Battle of the Amusement Park. After successfully hypnotizing Venom Parker, Charlotte did not go to Stark Tower, but took the initiative to find the agents outside the amusement park, and everyone came to SHIELD again. Abby, no, you are disgusting. Outside the conference room, a group of agents tried to appease Peter Parker while suppressing their nausea. In the conference room, Nick Fury quietly drew the curtains to prevent himself from accidentally seeing disgusting things. What is your purpose? He turned to Charlotte and said. Charlotte looked at the time and said directly, there are still 10 hours. Loki will use the cosmic cube to open the space wormhole, and then the alien army will invade the Earth. I don't know what you are talking about. Nick Fury did not admit that there was a cosmic cube. He looked at Loki in a tuxedo beside Charlotte and took the opportunity to glance at Norman and others who looked dazed. And Loki is here. Charlotte saw this and he just smiled slightly. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it, you will understand what I'm talking about tomorrow. According to the information obtained after several restarts, Dark Steven first solved Tony and Steve and then killed the agents lurking near Stark Tower. This guy seemed to be helping Loki open the wormhole smoothly, or he might be getting rid of the people who were in the way on the way to kill Loki. Maybe there were other purposes, but these were Charlotte's guesses, and the specific situation needed further exploration. Nick Fury was also wary of Charlotte and his group. After a brief conversation, he asked someone to secretly keep an eye on these guys, and then went to deal with other troubles. Charlotte didn't care. This guy's going to monitor us. Tuxedo Loki hated this feeling. Charlotte waved her hand. Don't worry about it. But why are we here? Loki will open the space wormhole soon. We should go to Stark Tower to keep an eye on him. Tuxedo Loki suggested. Charlotte didn't explain, and the old Steve smiled and said, Loki, from the beginning to now, you should have seen Spider-Man's superpowers. It's right to believe him. Hearing this, Tuxedo Loki, who was just about to act alone, also put aside his doubts. Indeed, along the way, this guy's ability to predict the future made him completely convinced. Following this guy, perhaps he can easily get a place in the resurrection match and prevent Loki in this world from making mistakes. The old captain was able to win 2 resurrection matches in a row, not because of his strength, but because he followed Spider-Man all the way to win. After a moment of thinking, he felt relieved. Time passed quickly. The next day, a strong light burst out from the Stark building, and a blue wormhole slowly opened over the city. Beep, beep, beep as the Chitauri army emerged from the wormhole. Everyone in SHIELD began to get busy, and one fighter plane after another flew across the deck runway towards the city. Charlotte and others also followed the large force to the city battlefield. What's the point of coming to SHIELD? In the cabin, old Steve approached Charlotte and finally couldn't suppress his curiosity. Charlotte glanced at Agent Coulson in front of him. Tell me, what did you find in SHIELD? Coulson's mouth corners slightly raised, and green flashes turned into Loki's appearance. I found someone playing a card game in the command room. Charlotte, what else? The secret's in Nick Fury's computer. He likes rough movies. Are there any other secrets? Of course there are. Captain Butt has learned to use the computer. Those movies were recommended to him by Nick. I haven't seen them. Old Steve blushed. Tuxedo Loki smiled. I didn't say it was you. Charlotte held his forehead. Please stop your humor and tell me what I want to know. Okay. Tuxedo Loki said seriously. Tony and Steve are missing. They haven't found the suspect, and they don't know that there are wizards in this world. Really? Charlotte fell into deep thought. With Dark Steven's ability, it is easy to find the traces of the contestants and kill them easily, but he didn't do so. At the same time, he can easily kill the Avengers, but he just killed Tony and Steve. He suspected that there might be someone in S.H.I.E.L.D. that Dark Steven feared, such as the supreme sorcerer of this world. That's why the other party would attack in secret. But now it seems that he guessed wrong. As for the behavior that seemed to help Loki open the space wormhole, there must be another purpose. As he was thinking, fighter planes roared into the sky above the city, and Charlotte was the first to land in the chaotic battlefield. Swoosh spider silk was launched along the way, flying high in the sky, and the Chitauri soldiers chasing behind him were turned into pieces in the spider silk trap. After a while, a familiar bloody smell emerged. Charlotte Parker, you finally showed up. Still in the original position, Hydra Steve controlled the octopus tentacles to whip, and the wall behind Charlotte exploded. Steve, you must survive. Bucky. Boom. Bucky immediately exploded, and sharp fragments swept away, but Charlotte had already predicted in advance to stay away from the explosion range. What? Hydra Steve's face changed drastically, and then he saw Charlotte's figure bursting out in the spider silk slingshot. Damn guy. He cursed, and 9 bloody tentacles swept across, and the cars on the roadside smashed towards Charlotte. Boom boom. The loud noise continued, and the red and blue figures shuttled through the metal fragments, moving gracefully and calmly, approaching the opponent in an instant. Boom. Charlotte, whose battle suit turned black and eyes were red, punched out, and 4 black spider spears behind him stabbed. Puff 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 bang. Immediately, blood flowers burst out from the chest of Hydra Steve. The terrible power directly destroyed his body and shook his spine out of his body. He knelt on the ground powerlessly without the power of Hydra, and his eyes were full of despair. How could you defeat me so easily? The blood stained his clothes red. Hydra Steve glanced at the black spine, that fell to the ground calmly, and still kept a glimmer of hope in his heart. Everyone has curiosity, and Spider-Man is no exception. As long as this guy picks up the black spine, he wins. Unfortunately, Charlotte fired Spider Silk to throw the spine into the ruins, completely destroying his last hope. Sorry, I found your little secret. What? Since then, the captain of Hydra has collapsed to the ground and died with his eyes open. Soon, the sky was lit with fire. Faced with an endless alien army, the New York high-level officials decided to use the ultimate weapon to destroy it. They had already given up New York. S.H.I.E.L.D. was powerless to do anything about it. The Avengers lost Iron Man and Captain America, and even Thor did not show up. With only Hulk as an unstable top combat force, they had no ability to stop it. At the same time, Tuxedo Loki stepped on Norman's flying skateboard and flew high into the sky, quickly parallel to the flying nuclear bomb. Shit, if it weren't for the resurrection quota, I wouldn't want to carry this thing. In the air, Tuxedo Loki hugged the nuclear bomb with a look of disgust, and the flying skateboard under his feet was turned on at full power, finally changing the flight trajectory of the nuclear bomb. Swoosh. Seeing the nuclear bomb flying towards the space wormhole, Nick Fury rekindled hope in his heart. All pilots cooperate with him to prevent alien soldiers from approaching the nuclear bomb. A 126 received. A 45 received. A 87 received. In an instant, the remaining fighters rushed to clear the way for Loki regardless of everything. On the other side, Charlotte has come to the top floor of Stark Tower. The special device is wantonly venting the energy of the space gem, and not far away is the duel between Old Steve and Deerhorn Loki. I won't let you hit my head this time. Old Steve, who has transformed into a devil muscle man, threw Deerhorn Loki to the ground with a hug. Psycho, I have never seen you. Deerhorn Loki got up in embarrassment and cursed at Old Steve. How dare you do this to me? Do you know who I am? I am. Thanks to Magician 115 for the 100 points. Thanks to Aboard Passerby for the 500 points. Thanks to the Prankster Wheel of Fortune for the 4000 points. Happy, asterisk asterisk. Chapter 98, Spatial Spider Silk, Ancient One's Prophecy, 4000 words, including 2 extra chapters. He was halfway through his words when Charlotte suddenly joined the battle and fired Spider Silk to lock the legs of Deerhorn Loki. What? Deerhorn Loki was confused, and before he could react, he was swung back and forth by the huge force of tens of tons and hit the ground. Bang bang bang. No. Stop it. Amid the flying gravel, Charlotte casually threw the desperate Deerhorn Loki into the pit. It's confirmed, he is not a clone. Understood. Elderly Steve flew over and locked Deerhorn Loki's throat with his elbow. Relax, it's normal to be out of breath. He comforted. Loki's face turned red, and he slapped Steve hard. Damn it, fuck. How can you learn from Nick? This is not good. Buzz. The next moment, the space gem flashed, and Norman and Professor Kurt were destroying the wormhole device. As the light of the space gem became dimmer and dimmer, the huge wormhole in the sky was slowly closing. When the space wormhole was about to close, Tuxedo Loki controlled the nuclear bomb to rush towards the increasingly shrinking wormhole. Boom. Watching the nuclear bomb fly into the wormhole, the space wormhole completely closed. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. It's over. Nick Fury raised his hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead and sat down on a chair. Tuxedo Loki returned to the top floor of Stark Building. I succeeded. I'm almost there. Old Steve, who was trying hard to lock his throat, gritted his teeth and said, damn, this guy won't stop breathing no matter what. Seeing that Deerhorn Loki was still struggling, Tuxedo Loki's face was a little unnatural. It was really strange to see the process of his own death with his own eyes. He figured it out, that it was impossible for him to repent at this stage, and this was the only way. We are gods, with strong vitality, and of course we can't be easily killed by mortals. Tuxedo Loki explained. I'm trying. Old Steve tried harder. Come on. Tuxedo Loki said, and then came to Charlotte's side. I'm curious why Stark followed the nuclear bomb into the space wormhole at that time. He was very confused. After personally experiencing the feeling of being a savior, the memory in Tuxedo Loki's mind became clearer and clearer. Charlotte looked at the calm sky. The space wormhole was about to close, and the speed of the nuclear bomb was too slow. If Tony's armor didn't increase the speed, it would be too late. So that's the case, but I guess his armor broke down at the time. Tuxedo Loki smiled slightly. I'm glad I lost to him. You've won the resurrection match before. What happens after the mission is successful? He asked again. You will see a prompt that the mission is successful. But I didn't see anything. Tuxedo Loki frowned. Maybe it's because the resurrection match time hasn't ended yet. Charlotte answered absent-mindedly. The process was unexpectedly smooth, which made him a little uneasy. If he got the resurrection quota so easily, then the several restarts would be a complete waste. He felt something was wrong. Sure enough, the next second the spider sense warned frantically, but Charlotte couldn't see where the danger was. Look, what is that? At this time, the old Steve exclaimed, and saw a familiar dark portal appear in the direction where the space wormhole disappeared. Then, the nuclear bomb, that was teleported into space, flew out from it. What? Everyone who witnessed this scene felt their scalps go numb instantly. Charlotte also understood the purpose of Dark Steven at this moment. This guy never wanted a resurrection spot. He wanted everything. The moment this thought came to his mind, the extremely dazzling white light drowned everyone's sight, and the whole city was instantly shrouded by the absolute destructive power of the ultimate weapon. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a resurrection spot. You will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1. 12 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 8th resurrection match. On the antenna tower under the night sky, Charlotte experienced the changes in the spider silk protein in his body. Until now, he has collected all the colorful spider silk skins. He didn't believe that this time it would be colorful black. Swoosh. He raised his hand to shoot the spider silk and saw the white spider silk sink into the empty night and then fixed. Charlotte. He tentatively reached out and dragged it, and found that the other end of the spider silk was firmly locked in the void. Good guy. Space spider silk? Charlotte was a little surprised. This thing was too unreasonable. He liked it. Then he jumped. Whoosh, the wind whistled in his ears, and Charlotte fired spider silks into the void one after another, and the whole person flew in the sky. Not long after, the spider webs in the night sky ignored the laws of physics, and attached to the empty space. Charlotte lay on the spider web hammock and experienced an unprecedented novelty. Oh, I almost forgot the business. He sat up from the spider web hammock and then jumped towards the Hamlet Street Theater. The space spider silk allowed him to swing the spider silk freely regardless of the surrounding environment. He was in the sky and fired spider silk from time to time to prevent himself from falling into a puddle of mud due to the fast falling speed. What followed was a boring and repetitive plot, and Charlotte was gradually numb. After a busy night, Charlotte led a group of people away from Stark Tower to avoid being wiped out by Dark Steven. It was not until the next day that he took everyone to Stark Tower on time. Little spider, look, the wormhole is open. Old Steve pointed at the huge wormhole that was spreading rapidly above the city. Seeing a black shadow quickly disappear into the wormhole, he exclaimed, sure enough, someone went in. Charlotte nodded slightly. Act according to the plan. Understood. Dark Steven has already left through the wormhole, so he has nothing to worry about. Everyone quickly came to the top floor of Stark Building. After quickly dealing with Deerhorn Loki, Charlotte successfully obtained the Cosmic Cube. As the huge wormhole in the sky slowly closed, Charlotte threw the Cosmic Cube to Tuxedo Loki. Go to Kamatage and ask for the Ancient One. Okay, wait for me. Tuxedo Loki disappeared into the small wormhole with the Cosmic Cube in his arms, and old Steve was a little nervous. Little spider, will the Ancient One you mentioned really help us? Of course. Charlotte smiled and said, only magic can defeat magic. Apart from the Ancient One, I can't think of anyone else who can kill that guy. He guessed that the reason why Dark Steven allowed Loki to open the space wormhole was to use the wormhole to go to the Chitauri base camp so as to kill the Chitauri soldiers and get a resurrection spot. Without specific coordinates, it would be difficult for Dark Steven to find the location of the Chitauri in the vast space, and he could only rely on Loki to realize this plan. The appearance of the nuclear bomb can eliminate the contestants and the Avengers in one fell swoop and get 2 more resurrection spots. Dark Steven has calculated everything. He may also plan to kill Thanos to get the 4th resurrection spot. What Charlotte can't figure out is why Dark Steven wants to kill Tony and Steve in advance. While thinking, a small wormhole opened, and the figure of Tuxedo Loki emerged from it. How is it? Didn't they agree? Seeing Tuxedo Loki coming back alone, old Steve felt bad. No, they are coming. After the words of Loki and the tuxedo fell, golden sparks flashed around him. In the golden portal, a group of camouflage wizards stepped out. Hello, I'm Wang, the disciple of Master Ancient One. The fat wizard in purple-red wizard robes stepped forward to introduce himself, and Charlotte nodded slightly. I'm Charlotte Parker. Why didn't Master Ancient One come? He had an ominous premonition. As soon as these words came out, sadness appeared on the faces of the wizards. Master Ancient One is fighting with the Dark Master. Wang's face was sad, and finally he sighed helplessly. What? Charlotte held her forehead. Without Master Ancient One, Dark Steven would be invincible. When did it happen? Last night, in a warehouse near New York. She died in the hands of the Dark Master in order to save Tony Stark. Wang said. Warehouse? Charlotte raised his eyebrows. He remembered. After a restart, he passed by the warehouse where Tony and Steve had an appointment to fight and found traces of dark magic. Dark Steven didn't need to activate dimensional magic to deal with Tony and Steve, so it was Ancient One who was fighting Dark Steven at that time. Thinking of this, he felt that he had missed the whole world. If he had held on for a few more minutes, perhaps Ancient One would have arrived to save his life. No, Ancient One was not Dark Steven's opponent, and he couldn't save him in the end. But in Wang's mouth, he found the key information. Why did Master Ancient One save Tony? He asked. Wang hesitated for a while, and then said, Master Ancient One had long predicted that the Dark Master would appear at this time. In Master Ancient One's prophecy, only Tony Stark can end that guy. Hearing this, Charlotte frowned. He didn't doubt the so-called prophecy. Master Ancient One could calculate that Tony was the key figure to determine the outcome, so Dark Steven should be able to do so. So this guy's target was only Tony, and killing Steve was just a matter of convenience. All the mysteries were finally solved. However, old Steve didn't believe it. Tony is already dead, so how can he end Dark Steven? He asked. Wang shook his head. I have no way of knowing the secret. As soon as these words came out, the scene fell silent. Oh no, look. At this time, Tuxedo Loki was the first to break the silence. He pointed at the fire that swept across the sky, his face grim. The space wormhole was closed a long time ago. How could those guys still decide to use this weapon? This is unreasonable. Charlotte had expected it. This is reasonable. If the appearance of the nuclear bomb was not caused by Dark Steven, then he could not complete 2 tasks at the same time. Did Dark Steven arrange all this a long time ago? Old Steve felt deeply powerless. A dark wizard who can use technological weapons is really desperate. Tuxedo Man, please send this thing to the desert where no one is. Charlotte said. Loki was puzzled. I think the best option is to send it directly to the Chitauri warship in outer space and kill that guy together. If you want him to send this thing back here, just ignore what I said. Sorry, I forgot he is also a wizard. Immediately, Tuxedo Loki stepped on the Green Goblin flying vehicle and rushed towards the nuclear bomb, using the space stone to transfer it to the desert on the other side of the earth. Soon, Loki returned to the top floor of the building. Done. He was silent for a while, then said, there are only 2 places now. How to divide it? I'm glad you took the initiative to bring up this matter. Charlotte shrugged. You and the old man can divide it between yourselves. Don't worry about me. Seeing Charlotte give up on his own initiative, Loki's expression was moved. Is this the selfless superhero? Damn, I was actually moved. And the old Steve said excitedly, "No, you need this place more than me. Anyway, it's a waste to give it to me." Seeing this, the wizards on the side showed puzzled expressions. "Are you talking about concert tickets?" Wang approached Charlotte and whispered, "I've never been there. Can you give me a spot?" Charlotte looked strange. "That's not good. The Ancient One just left, and you want to go? That's why I asked you secretly." Charlotte. In the following time, he did not continue to struggle. Neither the Ancient One nor Tony, who was predicted to decide the outcome, was there. This game was definitely a failure. In fact, it was not difficult for Charlotte to get a spot in this resurrection match. But with the appearance of symbiote Tony and Thanos, he realized that it was not a coincidence that the two resurrection match scenes were in the same multiverse. In future resurrection matches, the probability of him encountering terrible opponents is still very high. Even if he has a reopening plugin, the possibility of winning alone is still very small. So reliable teammates are necessary. Symbiote Tony and Thanos are both extra helpers, and they cannot be left to die in the hands of Dark Steven. If he comes to this world again to play the resurrection match in the future, the connections he has accumulated can greatly increase his chances of winning. At this moment, Charlotte seemed to realize something. Damn, he is getting better and better. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. You will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1. 11 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 9th revival match. The preparations are almost done. Charlotte thinks this is the last restart. He jumped down from the tall building, and the spider silk shot from his wrist sank into the void. The red and blue figure quickly flew towards Hamlet Street. Soon, he successfully snatched the scepter from the antler Loki. Before the tuxedo Loki appeared, he rushed to the cliff in the suburbs in advance. Boom. Soon, thunder rolled in the night sky, and the legendary Thor descended to the earth. "Loki, you are my brother. Why did you lie to me?" Thor roared loudly after landing, and the antler Loki appeared from the darkness. "I already know that we are not related by blood at all." "No, that's not true. Come back with me and confess your mistakes to your father. He will forgive you." "Okay, but it's not me who will go back with you. It's you who will go back with me." Deerhorn Loki glanced behind him and suddenly smiled strangely. The cosmic cube in his hand suddenly glowed with strong light. But in an instant, a small wormhole swallowed Thor, and Charlotte followed it into it. Loki had already discovered him, and the other party did it on purpose. Charlotte also did it on purpose. Haha, welcome to my world. On the desolate planet, Deerhorn Loki smiled proudly and waved his hand to summon an endless army of Chitauri. "Loki, you lied to me again." Thor was furious. He raised Thor's hammer high in his hand, and violent thunder bombarded the Chitauri army wantonly. Charlotte took the initiative to run towards the elegant figure in the crowd. "I surrender," he said to Ebony Maw. "Ebony Maw, the first order exceeded 2,000, and more will be added later. The following chapters will be combined into one chapter, so that the average increase will be faster. Chapter 99 Malay Mages Must Lose, 4,000 words. Please subscribe. In the battleship command room, Charlotte met Thanos again. "Spider-Man, I haven't seen you for many years. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Charlotte interrupted Thanos' reminiscing and said directly, "I need your help." Thanos was stunned for a moment, then stood up from the purple throne. "Okay, you helped me before. This time it's my turn to help you. What do you need me to do?" He agreed very readily. "Deal with a particularly difficult guy. He is a dark wizard." Charlotte said. "Dark wizard?" Thanos smiled. "It seems a bit interesting. Not only interesting, but also very dangerous, so you have to be prepared." Hearing this, Thanos' face gradually became serious. "Is it the same for me?" Charlotte said with certainty. "Of course. I fought him several times, and I was killed instantly every time." "You were killed by him?" Thanos raised his eyebrows. "It's just a metaphor." "Oh, sorry. Then I may also have to test your current strength. I need to know how much stronger he is than me." "Okay, I'll cooperate with you." After saying that, Charlotte fired Space Spider Silk with both hands, and it burst out from the Spider Silk slingshot in an instant. Boom. The wind whistled, the air burst, and Thanos blocked Charlotte's attack with one hand. his body as steady as a mountain. You are stronger than before, but I'm stronger. Thanos raised the corner of his mouth slightly and threw Charlotte into the air with his backhand. Swish. The space spider silk shot out again, and Charlotte changed his body shape in the void one after another. Thanos watched this scene quietly, without any intention of counter-attacking. Very strange spider silk. But the next moment, the inverted triangle eyes turned blood red, and the red and blue figure turned into black and rushed over. Boom. But at the same time as the darkness burst out, the black spider spear broke through the air. Thanos seemed to have expected it. The rich combat experience accumulated over the years allowed him to respond in an instant. He took a step back, dodged Charlotte's violent punch, and quickly thrust his sandbag-sized palm towards the black spider spear, completely ignoring the sharpness of the spider spear. Ding ding ding, got it. Sparks flashed, and Thanos burst out with a terrifying force far exceeding Charlotte's at the moment he grasped the spider spear, swinging the spider spear, and throwing Charlotte to the ceiling. Bang! The command room shook violently, and the metal of the ceiling was deeply dented. However, as Charlotte mashed the ceiling, the crystal spider silk in his hand tightened, and the spider traps all over Thanos' body cut everything wantonly. Gaga gap huff in an instant. Thanos staggered for a moment, and some metal fragments fell from his body. This looking at the spider silk trap that appeared at some unknown time, Thanos' expression changed slightly. He patted his armor and shook off more metal debris. Very good, it almost hurt me. As he said, he reached out and easily destroyed the spider silk trap. Charlotte fell from the ceiling and rubbed his sore shoulder with his backhand. It was just a close call. He knew it well. Thanos clapped his hands. So the dark wizard you mentioned is indeed very strong. Charlotte shrugged. I have fought him several times and never met him. Thanos looked solemn and waved his hand and said, Ebony Maw, let Loki return the space stone. I want to go to Earth myself. What? Ebony Maw, who was guarding the door, was surprised when he heard this. He glanced at Charlotte's figure and was shocked. Who on earth is this guy? He could actually alarm the great Thanos to do it himself. Okay, great Thanos. Ebony Maw turned to look for Loki, while Charlotte thought for a while and said again. Thor is also a powerful helper. We need his help. Thanos nodded. No problem. Loki will persuade his brother to join us temporarily. After all, he is the son of Odin, and should have some skills. That's not called persuasion. I think that's called deception. Charlotte said. It's normal to cheat on your loved ones. Yes, I have experience. Soon, Thanos summoned the 4 Black Orders, took Loki and Thor into the space wormhole. But in just a moment, everyone had arrived near the abandoned warehouse outside New York. Time is urgent. There is no time to summon more soldiers, but I think it's enough. Thanos said to Charlotte. Charlotte nodded and glanced at the other's metal gloves. Have you already made the Infinity Gauntlet? He asked. Thanos shook his head. This is not a real Infinity Gauntlet, just a temporary substitute. In the groove behind the gauntlet, 2 Infinity Stones slowly glowed. They were the Space Stone and the Mind Stone that Charlotte returned to the other party. Hurry up, I have to take Loki home. If you finish the fight early. Thor was a little impatient. He didn't know what kind of enemy he was about to face. Seeing that Thor's tone was disrespectful, Ebony Maw was about to teach Thor a lesson. But at the signal of Thanos' eyes, Ebony Maw could only shut up obediently. I sense some magic fluctuations ahead. Deer-horned Loki pointed to the front and said, let's go. Thanos took the lead, and everyone soon arrived in front of the twisted space barrier. But Thanos raised his hand to touch the space barrier, and before he could make any move, the impatient Thor could not wait. Let me do it. Boom. Thunder rolled in the night sky, and with the bombardment of Thor's hammer, it shot down the space barrier. Boom. Instantly, the electric current flew, and Thor flew backwards under the terrifying recoil force, and fell to the ground in embarrassment. My brother, you are still as brainless as before. Deer-horned Loki laughed. Thor was not convinced. Humph, I was not prepared just now. I will do it again. No need. Thanos waved his hand, and the space gem on the back of his hand glowed faintly, and the dimensional barrier in front opened a passage. Space magic, of course, must use the power of space. He said calmly. Let's go. But everyone stepped into the space wormhole again, and the next moment they came to a wonderful world. The sky, the earth, The woods, the rocks and other things are all moving irregularly. The abandoned warehouse in the sky swayed with the wind. The tentacles of the dark magic circle surged. The terrible darkness was spreading, and the figures in it had already been swallowed up. Not far away, on the island made of rocks, the golden magic circle was shining, but the more terrible darkness quickly submerged it. There. Charlotte pointed in the direction of the island, and Thanos activated the space gem without hesitation. Buzz the wormhole reappeared, and the 4 black generals rushed into the wormhole first. For the great Thanos. The black dwarf who rushed out of the wormhole roared, and the battle axe in his hand, slammed towards the bald wizard holding the golden magic circle. The face of the ancient wizard who discovered the sneak attack changed slightly, holding the magic circle shield in his hand and turning back. The huge battle axe fell to the ground, and a terrifying crack quickly spread on the ground. Idiot, you hit the wrong person. Ebony Maw cursed inwardly, and his fingertips moved slightly, and the surrounding gravel quickly floated up, and the surface of the stone quickly fell off, and turned into a sharp stone spear. Swish. Instantly, dense stone spears covered the figure in the dark, but were intercepted by the dark magic arrays. Kill. The next moment, Dark Proxima and General Corvus leaped up with their spears and swords in hand. Yin. Boom. In an instant, the spear pierced into the dark magic array with a bloody edge, and the soul battle blade swept across, twisting the void. Bang. The figure in the dark was defeated by the battle blade, and the next second it condensed behind the two. Be careful behind. Ebony Maw warned, and he stretched out his hand and clenched it, and his elegant figure quickly rose in the rising stone pillars. At the same time, stone pillars rose from the ground and quickly formed a cage to trap the dark figure. Then, Black Dwarf and others pounced again, and the battle became more and more intense. Charlotte, who emerged from the wormhole, was surprised to see this. Can they really fight the boss? Thanos smiled and said, they have followed me in battle for many years, so they have this strength. But Charlotte still felt something was wrong, and he came to the Ancient One. I'm Charlotte Parker, where is Tony? He asked. The Ancient One didn't waste any words. Follow me. She opened the golden portal, and the 3 of them found the dark magic circle in the warehouse. Inside, the Ancient One pointed at the dark magic circle in front of her, then formed a seal with both hands, and the golden light gradually dissipated the dark energy in the dark magic circle. I need time to pull them out, she said. After she finished speaking, the warehouse shook violently, and the walls quickly twisted and turned into fragments as the dimension twisted. Another Dark Steven rushed in with dark energy. Thanos glanced at the other party, raised his hand and punched. Boom. A huge force exploded, and the Black Shadow collapsed. He is just a clone, the Ancient One reminded. She paused. Me too. What? At this moment, Charlotte seemed to have sensed something. Looking up, I saw the stars twinkling in the night sky, golden meteors falling obliquely, and the body of Dark Steven occupied the entire sky like a demon. Supreme Mage, you are old. At this time, Dark Steven smiled hideously, the foreign object between his eyebrows squirmed, and the strange third eye suddenly opened. SHHH. In an instant, endless dark monsters flew out and quickly condensed into a demon dragon with extremely terrifying power. Roar! The demon dragon roared, and the hellfire swept down. The entire dimensional space was shrouded in high temperature, and the earth showed signs of melting. What? Thanos' face changed. Is this the so-called power of the Dark Mage? But without waiting for the hellfire to spread, the huge golden sparks started to teleport, and instantly swallowed all the hellfire. Crack, crack, crack on the broken earth. The thin bald mage staggered, his face pale to the extreme. Break this world, otherwise his power will become stronger and stronger. The real Ancient One shouted to Charlotte and others. What the hell? Charlotte's face was dark. The peak competition started inexplicably. How could this be played? Looking at the Ancient One's clone again, under her magical power, Tony's head finally popped out of the dark magic circle. Help. Charlotte flew to the dark magic circle, and stretched out her hand to drag Tony out. Then it was young Steve. I saw something strange down there. Young Steve panted. Down there? Charlotte's heart moved. Thanos, attack here. Understood. Thanos raised his gloves, and the space gem and the mind gem shone brightly. The two gems' power increase was far less than that of the power gem, but the energy contained in them should not be underestimated. Boom. The blue and golden light entangled and turned into an energy beam that poured into the dark magic circle, and the entire dimensional space trembled violently. But it seemed that there was still a breath left. "Little bug, help me," Thanos shouted, and then took out the Titan sacred artifact from his arms. "Here it comes." Charlotte reached out to touch the sacred artifact, and spider totems appeared passively on his chest. Buzz. As the red and blue light poured into the dark magic circle, the entire dimensional mirror collapsed. What? The dark power was rapidly weakened, and Dark Steven's face looked ugly. How is it possible? How could the power of that insect be so strong? The next moment, the Ancient One squatted down and drew a golden magic circle, and the collapsed dimensional mirror reappeared. However, this was not a world that belonged to darkness. The blue sky, white clouds, earth, lakes, and forests. The golden sun was hanging high in the sky, and the power of white magic began to suppress Dark Steven. No. Dark Steven roared to the sky, and the darkness all over his body condensed into substance, and then saw dark clones rushing out of his body, quickly occupying the entire sky. What? Seeing this, Ebony Moore and others who had just dealt with the dark clone were completely panicked. The next moment, countless dark clones shot dark ropes, but Ancient One was not to be outdone. She wiped her hands, and the golden holy sword swept across, breaking a large area of dark ropes. But there were still many who avoided the sharp edge of the holy sword, and attacked Charlotte and others. Buzz the blue wormhole bloomed, and Thanos ignored the restraint of the dark rope and teleported behind Dark Steven. "I got you." Thanos punched out, and the gem light flashed again. What? Under the astonished eyes of Dark Steven, the sandbag-sized fist smashed down. Boom. The air burst, and Dark Steven's figure hit the ground like a cannonball. Before he fell to the ground, the spider web connected to the void launched his figure into the sky. Come again. At this moment, Thanos' blood boiled all over his body, and he raised his hand to take out the double-edged sword from the space wormhole. Boom. With the blessing of hundreds of tons of huge force, the sharp blade of the sword tore through the darkness with a storm tornado. At the same time, the Ancient One on the ground flew into the portal, and the next time he appeared, he was already next to Dark Steven. And Charlotte also burst out from the spider silk slingshot. But seeing the Ancient One playing close combat at this time, he knew he was finished. By the way, where are Loki and Thor? As soon as the thought came to his mind, Dark Steven had a triumphant grin on his face, and then a demon dragon suddenly emerged from his chest, swallowing the three people who came to kill him with its ferocious dragon mouth. Roar. The dragon roared and shook the earth, and the fire of hell spread in the dragon's mouth. Ebony Moore and others were drowned by the dark clone. In the woods in the distance, Loki was still arguing with Thor. "You are my brother." "I'm not. We are not related by blood." "That's also considered cousins." "No. Go back with me to apologize to my father." "Impossible. I will soon become the king of the earth. Thanos promised me." "He is dead." Thor pointed at the hellfire that burst in the sky and snorted. "You can go back with me now." Loki was stunned. "If they are dead, how can we go back?" Thor. Not long after, darkness came and Thor's hammer fell into the ruins. "There was a power outage due to heavy rain last night, so I couldn't write. Today's extra chapters will be a few hours later. I will try to write more." Summary. The first order yesterday was 4,100, so there will be 20 extra chapters later. The initial average subscription was 3,000, and today it is 4,000, and there are 10 more chapters to be added. There will be 30 chapters in total, and if nothing unexpected happens, there will be a little bit of subscription every day this month. Chapter 100 Men Cursed by Knowledge, 6,000 words, including 3 additional chapters. You have been eliminated and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be rewarded with +1 original Spider Silk mode, 10 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 10th resurrection match. Charlotte promised that this must be the last restart. There was no time to test the new Spider Silk. He shot the Spider Silk with both hands to lock the void, and his figure turned into a cannonball and flew towards the direction of the Electric Man. He raced against time to find the old man Steve and put him in the Spider Silk slingshot without much explanation. Little spider, what are you doing? Take you to fly. Wait for me to get ready. The wind was howling, and the old man Steve was filled with wind as soon as he opened his mouth, and the wrinkles on his old face swayed with the wind. Little spider, your spider silk is so cool. Is there anyone holding the other end of the spider silk? What did you say? The wind is too strong, and I can't hear it. You can hear it. Don't try to lie to me this time. During the time period of going to Hamlet Street, Charlotte quickly explained the next plan for the old man Steve. Haha, this is crazy, but I like it. Hamlet Street. You are born to desire to be. Bang. Two figures fell from the sky, and Loki's clones collapsed. Charlotte threw the mind scepter to the old Steve. Act according to the plan. Yes, sir. The older you get, the more coquettish you become. Charlotte shook her head, turned around and fired a spider silk slingshot, and disappeared from the scene. While the old Steve held the scepter, looked at the citizens kneeling on the ground in front of him with a blank face, and raised his hand and smiled. My people, get up. Everyone. Is this old soldier a psychopath? There was no response, and the old Steve smiled awkwardly. Sure enough, only Loki likes to do such embarrassing things. The citizens dispersed one after another, and he soon waited for the tuxedo Loki. Are you Steve? It's me, Loki. I come from the same world as you. Do you want to know what happened after you died? I can guess. But you can't guess how much beer Thor drank in those years. 3 minutes later, the old Steve successfully convinced the other party, and then pointed in the direction where Charlotte left. Go ahead, the Thor of this world is waiting for you. What? Tuxedo Loki was startled, and then he saw the old Steve adjusting the spider silk launcher. Do you want to play the game of shouting for help? He asked while dragging the spider silk slingshot. Loki's face turned black. I don't want to give up. Loki, who was forcibly dragged into the spider silk slingshot, flew high into the sky. You should let me get ready. He shouted. You should shout for help. No. I'm serious, because I can't seem to find the next foothold. I'm not very skilled at this. What? No, help. Haha, the wind is too strong. I can't hear it. The thrilling experience of swinging on the spider silk ended quickly. On the edge of the cliff, Thor stared blankly at the direction where the wormhole disappeared, his face full of confusion. What pushed me away? It seems to be a bug. Yes, damn bug. He gritted his teeth and shouted, Loki, I will definitely take you back. I'm here. Two figures flew down, looking at the younger Thor. Tuxedo Loki's face was full of sighs. Brother, what did you call me? Thor couldn't believe his ears, and suspected that he had heard it wrong. You are Loki, then the guy just now. Ha ha ha, you almost fooled me with your clone again. At Thor's self-imagination, Tuxedo Loki's face was complicated. This guy is still so innocent. Let's go home. Great, I didn't expect you to take the initiative to go back with me. Thor raised Thor's hammer with a look of surprise. Heimdall. Boom. In an instant, the surging dark energy rushed into the earth, and the old Steve also broke into the energy transmission at the last moment. Who are you? Thor found a strange guy in the transmission channel. The old Steve smiled. I'm Loki's friend. He wants to visit my room. Tuxedo Loki said expressionlessly. Thor scratched his head. Strange hobby, but your friend is really old. I'm less than 200 years old. The old Steve explained. Oh, that's pretty young. A few seconds later, a messy Asgard. Burst dark energy poured into the palace, and Thor and the other two emerged from it. Isn't this the Rainbow Bridge? Old Steve looked around, a little surprised. He had heard Thor mention Asgard's exclusive teleportation method before. Tuxedo Loki explained. The Rainbow Bridge has been destroyed. This time the teleportation method uses dark energy. Destroyed? Old Steve was puzzled. Then how was it repaired later? Of course it was repaired with the cosmic cube. Thor stretched out his hand and said, Brother, give me the cosmic cube quickly. Tuxedo Loki. Sorry, the cosmic cube is not in my hand. What? Thor was furious. Loki, you lied to me again. He grabbed Loki's collar and yelled. Calm down. Tuxedo Loki stretched out his hand to wipe the spit on his face full of disgust. On the side, old Steve frowned and said, time is running out. I know. Tuxedo Loki broke free from Thor's hand and shouted towards the empty palace. Father, Please allow me to call you this. I know you and mother already know about this. Please help us. Seeing Loki so abnormal, Thor also found something wrong. Are you Loki? He was a little uncertain. Of course he is. Divine light descended on the throne of the God King, and Odin's figure emerged in it. Beside Odin, Frigga looked at Tuxedo Loki with gentle eyes. My child, I'm glad to see you now. Mother. Seeing the familiar face again, tears welled up in Tuxedo Loki's eyes. I'm sorry, I must have disappointed you. He lowered his proud head, and regret came like a tide. No. Frigga slowly came to Loki and gently stroked Loki's face. You must have experienced a lot, right? Her eyes were full of tolerance and love for her children. Loki finally couldn't help hugging his mother. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I was wrong, but it's too late. I got retribution, that is, losing you and losing everything. He sobbed and apologized. Loki, what are you talking about? We are all here, the whole family is here. Thor was infected by the atmosphere at the scene. He opened his arms and wanted to hug his mother and brother, but was pushed away by Frigga with one hand. Wait a minute. Thor. His face was full of disbelief, and then his face changed drastically, as if he had thought of something. Could it be that I'm the adopted child? No. Thor held his head and wailed, but Odin waved his hand and blocked his throat with a divine power. I'm so annoyed. Odin walked to the mother and son and gently lifted Loki, who was kneeling on the ground. Stand up, Loki, you are my son. I will not allow you to be so weak. Odin's tone was sonorous and powerful, and a trace of tenderness flashed across his old face, and then he instantly returned to seriousness. I know why you came here. Father. Loki in a tuxedo stood up. Looking at the serious Odin, he felt uneasy. Will you help me? Of course not. Solve your own problems by yourself. This is a manly thing. Odin snorted coldly, and then turned around and left. Looking at his father's gradually disappearing back, Loki was disappointed, but still felt fortunate. It's okay. I'm already very happy to see you. Frigga gently stroked Loki's head. Child, how did you become as stupid as Thor? Thor's eyes were completely desperate. It turns out that in my mother's heart, I have always been a fool. No. Frigga ignored Thor's exaggerated performance and pointed to the golden spear on the throne. Take it and do what you should do. Looking at the glittering golden spear, Loki suddenly hesitated. This is the supreme artifact of the father of the gods, the eternal spear, which contains Odin's divine power. With the eternal spear, he will definitely get a place to resurrect. But his plan is to kill Loki in this world and prevent the tragedy from happening later. But he seems to have no right to decide the life and death of Loki in this world. Because this world still has a family who loves Loki deeply. Before returning to Asgard, he will not hesitate. After returning to Asgard and seeing his family, his heart was shaken. As if seeing Loki's hesitation, Frigga still kept a kind smile. Go, child. Everything is destined. Follow your heart. But Loki, it's okay. He won't die, but you can also get what you want. What? Tuxedo Loki was stunned for a moment, then took a deep breath and said, I understand. Although he didn't know what his mother's words meant, he decided. Steve, let's go. He turned and said to the old Steve, and then came to the throne and slowly reached out to hold the golden spear. In an instant, the divine light overflowed, the eternal spear hummed softly, and the whole Asgard was jumping and cheering. Looking at Loki holding the eternal spear high, Thor's face was shocked, and then dimmed. Sure enough, my brother is the heir chosen by my father. He was disappointed in his heart, but he was still willing to congratulate his brother. The person who can be recognized by the eternal spear is the future king of Asgard. He is willing to withdraw. Boom. The next moment, Loki, holding the spear, waved his hand. The cosmic energy surged, and the tip of the spear bloomed a dark energy portal. Let's go. Loki and old Steve jumped into it one after another, and Thor thought about it, and followed into the transmission channel. Goodbye, children. The dark energy dissipated, and Odin returned to the palace. He held his wife's hand, his face full of sighs. I know you are reluctant, but they can only walk their own way. Everything is just advanced. I understand. Frigga snuggled in Odin's arms. She still looked at the direction where Loki disappeared. This is the price of growing up. We also went this way back then. I understand. Odin nodded slightly, and a trace of relief appeared on his old face. Let's go. You have worked hard for so many years. It's time to retire. You too. Earth, New York suburbs. Buzz the dimension space belonging to the Ancient One dispelled the darkness, and Dark Steven was smashed down to the rocky island in Thanos' angry fist. Die. In the sky, Thanos turned into a meteor and fell obliquely under the light of the gem, vowing to crush Dark Steven into slag. At the same time, the Ancient One threw his hand and bloomed the golden shield and was about to step into the golden portal. Wait. Charlotte stopped Ancient One. Supreme Sorcerer, you should change this bad habit. What? Ancient One frowned, and the next moment he saw a dragon burst out of Dark Steven's chest. Boom. The fire of hell burst out from the dragon's mouth, and the dimensional space quickly melted under this power. Roar. The dragon's roar resounded through the night sky, and Thanos fell to the ground in a mess from the blue wormhole. Looking at Thanos, whose armor was severely damaged and whose skin was burned, Charlotte quickly shot Spider Silk to cover the burned area of the other party. How are you? I'm fine. Thanos half knelt on the ground, gasping for breath. You're right, he has been waiting for us to be fooled. Seeing this, Ancient One finally understood what Charlotte meant. Immediately, she gave up close combat and tried to condense the mirror space again. It's useless. I'm destined to win, and Christine will definitely come back to life. Dark Steven's smile was extremely distorted. He formed seals with his hands, and the dark magic circle burst out countless dark tentacles, which attacked everyone in an overwhelming manner. Shit, it's here. Tony and Steve, who hadn't recovered yet, were submerged by tentacles again. Great Thanos. In the tentacles, Ebony Maw and others were wailing for help. Ancient One didn't have time to open the dimensional space and could only split into countless clones holding shields to chop the surrounding tentacles. But on the other side, space wormholes flashed one after another, and Charlotte rode on Thanos' back to avoid the pursuit of tentacles. Little worm, you make me feel ashamed, Thanos said with a dark face. Sorry, I rode you this time, and next time you will be ridden by me. It feels a little wrong, but this is what you said. I promise. As soon as the words fell, a golden meteor flashed in the night sky, and Odin's power descended on the earth, and all living things palpitated at this moment. Here it comes. In Charlotte's surprised eyes, the golden meteor crossed time and space, and pierced the sky, and in the blink of an eye it sank into the chest of Dark Steven. Ah! With a scream, Dark Steven fell to the ground from the air, and the tentacles in the sky collapsed. Odin. Shrouded in darkness, Dark Steven covered the golden hole in his chest with his hands, gnashing his teeth as he watched Loki and the others descend. We arrived just in time. Old Steve raised his shield and smiled. Who is the enemy? Thor glanced at Dark Steven and the embarrassed Black 4 generals. They all look alike. No, the enemy is only him. Charlotte flew to the ground. His goal is to kill everyone, including Odin. As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked. It doesn't matter, I will do it. Tuxedo Loki waved his hand, and the spear of eternity fell into his palm. His whole body was instantly wrapped in dazzling golden armor. Divine light overflowed, and a strong aura swept across, and the scene was shocking. Charlotte. Damn, he pretended. The next second, the dark tentacles broke out of the ground, dragged Loki and slammed him to the ground in an instant. Bang bang. As Loki's figure was thrown into the ruins, everyone's faces froze. What did he just say? Thor asked. Old Steve shrugged. He said he would die first. Charlotte patted Old Steve on the shoulder. Poor lonely old man. I'll prepare a hearing aid for you next time. Thank you. I want the most expensive one. On this side, Dark Steven waved his hand, and the hideous tentacles reappeared. Ha ha ha, the spear of eternity. It's interesting. The terrible tentacles spread wantonly, destroying everything around them along the way. He sneered. Even if Odin takes action himself, he can't stop me. As he spoke, the hole in his chest squirmed black granulations, and the scars left by the spear of eternity healed quickly. I don't believe I can't kill you. Thor raised Thor's hammer, and summoned terrifying thunder, and the thunder flashed and bombarded the tentacles in the sky. Thanos also took the opportunity to open a huge space wormhole, and the muzzle of the temple number 1 in space was aimed at the battlefield. Fire at me. Thanos gave an order, and dense energy beams passed through the wormhole to bombard the scene. Boom boom. Yin. The spear of eternity hummed again, and golden meteors streaked across the sky, and the tentacles were torn apart by divine power wherever they passed. Buzz the golden portal flashed several times, and Charlotte's figure shuttled through it, and quickly approached Dark Steven. "We are here." Ancient One raised his hand to draw a circle, and Charlotte rushed out of the portal for the last time. Crack, crack, crack. The moment the crystal spider silk stretched straight, the spider silk trap instantly shrank and cut towards Dark Steven. HMPH, it's useless. Dark Steven waved his hand, and the attacking spider silk trap trembled slightly, and then purple dark notes were seen rippling from the spider silk. "What kind of magic is that?" Thor exclaimed, and the next second he was hit by the notes passing by at high speed. Ah! Boom. Screams came, and Loki and others fell under the impact of the notes, and finally Ancient One used the golden portal to transfer them to his side. Soon, ghost hands spread among the overwhelming dark tentacles, the demon dragon roared to the sky, and the fire of hell turned into a pillar of fire, to form a cage to trap everyone. In the extreme high temperature, the space was distorted, and only despair was left in the darkness. "It's so hot, I'm almost cooked." Old Steve was burned by the shield in his hand and quickly let go. Charlotte's nanosuit was sparking, and was about to be scrapped in the high temperature. Buzz Ancient One held up a magic circle with both hands to cover everyone, isolating the high temperature as much as possible. In my prophecy, it was Tony Stark who stopped all this. She looked at the exhausted Tony. "Me." Tony's skin was wrapped in the symbiote, and he stood up, and said after his injuries recovered quickly, "Sorry, if the dead can stop him, I will definitely be the first." He looked helpless. Charlotte frowned. This guy really didn't look like he could turn the tide of the battle. "Master Ancient One, where is the time stone? Can it stop him?" he asked. Ancient One shook his head. "The time stone has been stolen." Charlotte rubbed his eyebrows. "Then there is no way. He has successfully gathered the power of Thanos, Ancient One, and Odin, but he can't defeat Black Strange. This peak game is too difficult. No, there must be something he overlooked. Infinity Stones, contestants, and Spider Totem. Master Ancient One, try this." Charlotte took out the Titan's holy weapon from Thanos' broken armor. Buzz 3.5 Spider Totems emerged from the holy vessel, and Ancient One looked surprised. "This is such a strange power." She took the holy vessel and tried to inject magical energy. Boom. In an instant, red and blue light poured into the night sky, and the spider totem spanned the universe. And then there was nothing else. How to use this? Ancient One was full of confusion. "You are a wizard, you ask me. I'll do it too." Thanos stepped forward and stretched out his hand to hold the holy weapon. The moment, purple starlight burst out from the vessel, turning into a starry sky with 3.5 spider totems as the background. "I'll do it too." Thor confidently stepped forward and held the holy weapon. Zizzy, a flash of lightning flashed, and there was nothing unusual about the others. Thor, "I'll do it. I'll do it too." Then, young Steve and old Steve, as well as Tuxedo Loki and others tried it one after another, and in the end there was still nothing unusual. "So is it my turn?" Seeing everyone looking at him, Tony casually touched the holy weapon. "Buzz, it's reacting." Under the expectant gaze of everyone, a dazzling light burst out from Tony's brow. Before the light spread, the demon dragon roared over and completely devoured it. Charlotte. The 11th resurrection match. In the dark dimension, Ancient One and Dark Steven fought fiercely in the night sky. Outside the dark magic circle, with the help of Charlotte, the Ancient One clone finally dragged Tony out of the magic circle. While Dark Steven hadn't noticed this, he said, "Thanos, let's start." "Understood." Under Charlotte's expectant gaze, Thanos took out the holy weapon from his arms. Buzz the two touched the holy weapon one after another, and then looked at Tony together. "What do you mean?" Tony looked strange, but he still reached out subconsciously. "Wait, Master Ancient One, give this thing some magic first." At Charlotte's reminder, Ancient One injected magic energy into the holy weapon with doubt. Boom. The red and blue spider totem and the purple starlight bloomed in the night sky one after another. "What are you doing? Come and play together," Charlotte urged, and Tony came back to his senses. Buzz finally, as Tony reached out to touch the holy weapon, a dazzling light instantly bloomed between his eyebrows and then quickly spread to the entire dimensional space. It was a vast expanse of white, and nothing could be seen. I don't know how long it took. When Charlotte opened his eyes, he saw that the dimensional space had disappeared, and the clones of Ancient One and Dark Stephen collapsed one after another. No. A scream came from the sky, and the real bodies of Ancient One and Dark Stephen fell from the sky. Although Charlotte didn't know what happened, when he wanted to shoot Spider Silk to catch the falling Ancient One, he found that his wrist was empty, and he couldn't shoot Spider Silk at all. Charlotte. Suddenly, the wind whistled beside him, and the purple beast rushed up and caught the yellow figure with a narrow escape. Boom as Thanos landed, the Ancient One in his arms, looked at the purple guy in front of him with a shocked face. I'm Thanos. Hello, Thanos. You can put me down now. Thank you for saving me. You're welcome. I may kill you next time we meet. You are very humorous. Charlotte happened to see this harmonious scene, and his eyes couldn't help but become strange. This is not in the script, right? Looking at the other side, Dark Stephen landed and smashed a huge pit. Stephen climbed out of the pit in a panic, his face full of horror. How is it possible? My magic. It's impossible. How could this happen? He looked at his hands in disbelief and found that, no matter what he did, he couldn't use any magic. If it weren't for the dark energy automatically protecting his body, he would have died when he landed just now. My magic is gone too. Here, Ancient One raised his hand and tried to cast a spell, but he still didn't know how to do it. She frowned. To be precise, I forgot how to use magic. Hearing this, Thanos looked back at Tony, as if he had thought of something. Man cursed by knowledge, you have successfully cursed us. Yesterday and today, I returned a total of 5 chapters. Happy end of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.